going on? Our guest is backstage. I'm going to bring him up in a second. I know I didn't tell anybody about this, but that's because of the Panelverse and everybody else. They like to infiltrate this podcast and like to dox a lot. For some reason, I have a ton of ops out here. Anyways, but enough of that. Welcome to Woke Autopsy, where we don't sanitize the corpse. We slice it open, pull out the organs, and show you exactly what killed it. Tonight, we're dissecting one of the most grotesque, yet increasingly mainstream ideas slithering through Western culture.
White extermination propaganda. That's right, not replacement theory, not demographic change. We're calling it what it is. A deliberate multi-decade psychological and cultural campaign to make white people, specifically white Americans of European descent, view their own demographic decline, cultural erasure, and eventual minority status as not only inevitable, but morally desirable.
Yeah, it's really bad. Let's start with the obvious blasphemy everybody's supposed to ignore. Large segments of Black community have been taught, and many genuinely believe that they literally cannot be racist. Power plus prejudice, the sacred catechism, right? So when prominent forces and voices call for white people to be wiped out or cheer abolish whiteness or celebrate the day there are no more white babies, it's framed as justice, not hatred. Meanwhile, if a white person even notices they're becoming a minority in the country their ancestors built, they're branded a domestic terrorist, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And then we have the liberal white contingent, the most fascinating specimens on the table. These are the people who have internalized a pathological self-hatred so profound they cheer their own obsolescence, their own destruction. Let's say they march in pride parades for every identity except their own. They celebrate diversity as long as it means fewer people who look like them in their neighborhoods, schools, and boardrooms. This isn't compassion.
Yeah, this is racial masochism dressed up as virtue. Hating your own people, white, claiming moral superiority is not enlightenment. It's self-deletion by ideology. Can't even say the S word because of, language policing here on YouTube. And society has allowed it. Hollywood, academia, corporate HR departments, and the mainstream media pump this into propaganda daily. Whiteness is original sin. Western civilization is a cancer. Open borders aren't just policy, they're reparations. Millions of people from cultures with zero historical connection to America are imported, often with zero expectation of assimilation, while the native white culture is mocked, deconstructed, and replaced. They call it enrichment. The autopsy shows it's a demographic conquest by stealth. And yes, we're also cracking open the third rail, the occupation of Israel in America. The extraordinary influence of pro-Israel lobbyists, dual citizen officials, media moguls, and financial networks that shape U.S. foreign policy, suppress criticism, and advance narratives and serve Israeli interests over American ones. This is about to get spicy, folks. Whether it's billions in conditional aid while American cities crumble, or the way certain institutions treat anti-Semitism as more sacred than free speech or the interest of a historic American nation. This, too, is part of the power structure that makes open discussion of white demographic survival radioactive. This isn't a conspiracy theory, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's pattern recognition in real time. The patient, the historic American nation, is on the table. The cause of death is listed as diversity. The real killer is the ideology that made self-preservation a thought crime. So grab your scalpels. We're going in deep. Let's start this. This is Woke Autopsy. All right, let's go ahead and introduce our guest before we get into the next segment.
Spotify streams up 50% from 2019.
Why are they going to Orthodox Church more than the Evangelical Church? I'm evangelical. I'll say, well, first of all, they want something that has lasted. They want something that is ancient and that is beautiful, something that has stood the test of time, something that's not going to change.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
The United States and all of Western civilization has been profoundly shaped by the extraordinary achievements of the Greek people, stretching all the way back to ancient times, long time.
Okay, here we go. We're bringing up all the people on the screen right now. Let's go ahead and bring everybody up. Anyways, how's it going, man?
Hey, what's
Welcome
up?
to
What's up,
Woke
gentlemen?
Autopsy. Can't even say it right.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This will be good. This will be good. I'm excited.
Yeah. How did you like your tie there? It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yep. Yeah.
Look,
It's amazing what people can do with AI. This is why
Yes.
my RAM is so expensive though for my computer. You know, because
Yeah, I know, right?
yeah, no, that I get a lot of compliments on that intro. The intro, I had a buddy of mine, Aiden, that helped me out with that. Yeah, it turned out like exactly what I was hoping for. So yeah, I mean, because I wanted to, mix in like a lot of people were giving me a hard time for including Trump, but it's like, I mean, he's just talking about the Greeks. Like, why? Like, cut me some slack, guys. Like, he's just talking about the Greeks. That's why I included it. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no problem. But here's the thing, though, is like I think including Trump is extremely important because the other option would have definitely been indefensible for sure. I can defend Trump way more than the other side. But moving forward with this, I mean, the theme of the day that we're talking about is white extermination propaganda. We see this all the time. But Ben, I got another surprise for you. Got a video I got to roll out so we can see this real quick because I don't really think that people know what we're talking about. They'll just think that it's a farce. They think that, oh, you know what? Yeah, I've heard that it's a thing. No, this is really becoming deeply ingrained in American culture. Let's go ahead and look at the footage as we perform this autopsy together.
All right.
That's my question. No, like no reconciliation, no reparations. We've already overly prioritized in society. I'll prove it to you. There is institutional black privilege in society today, and no one wants to say it out loud. Blacks can get into college with lower test scores. They get more acting contracts. They're literally in every other television commercial, right? They're allowed to, literally, if a white person says a certain word, you could be completely terminated from public life, right? And so we've spent trillions of dollars post-Great Society, post the Civil Rights Act paired with the Great Society. Did any of that help? No, actually, blacks got poorer on average. And so before the Great Society, 75% of blacks growing up in America had a father and a mother in the home. Now that number is anywhere between 20 to 25%. So America got significantly less racist. We spent trillions of dollars in our urban corridor. We implemented affirmative action in our government hiring practices, in our corporate hiring practices, in our college admissions. And yet blacks on average are poorer than they were in proportion to the 1960s. What changed? And the answer is that we are not confident, we're not honestly courageous enough to empower black voices to say, hey, you have to fix the problem in your own communities. It's not about white guilt or white pandering. It's about how about you stay with the woman you impregnate? How about you stop embracing gangster rap culture? How about you stop listening to music that glorifies the worst part of society? And people are afraid to say this. And the affirmative action creates race resentment is what ends up happening.
I just want to interject real quick. Let me go ahead and take this off the screen real quick and put all three of us on here. It's very pivotal that I put Charlie Kirk up there because I'm pretty sure a lot of us on the right admire him. He's not so admirable on the left. He brings up different distinctions here, like white guilt. I think that is a psyop. I don't really think this exists. I think it's something we've been brainwashed to believe. What do you think, Ben?
Well, yeah. So a couple things. So it's one of the things that I notice about, myself as as someone who wants to identify, with my ethnic heritage, and look, like white obviously is a race, and so subcategory of species, and then a subcategory of race would be ethnicity. I actually think, finding identity in your ethnicity makes more sense. But what I will say is this. There's a particular targeting of all the ethnicities that fall under the category of white or ethnically European, if you will. And this is particularly evident in like universities, for example, right? So if you go to a university, if someone like me, a white Christian male, goes to a university, I am basically encouraged to deracinate my identity, every aspect of it, whether it be my religion, my race, my ethnic heritage, my culture. In fact, I'm told I don't even have culture. And whereas everybody else is empowered, it's platformed, it's cheered on, it's celebrated. And actually, if anything, so it's kind of two things simultaneously, right? I'm told A, there is no such thing as whiteness, and then B, I need to apologize for it. Those are like the two things which are obviously contradictory. Like those things can't both be true, and yet I'm told both of those things in different contexts. Like in one context, I'm told, oh, there's no such thing as white. But then when it comes to apologizing for atrocities in the past, which, by the way, we've actually committed disproportionately less compared to other populations, like, for example, the Arab population, really any population, and obviously civilization being brought to the world by mainly my ancestors, and so all this to say, like, I'm not only am I not allowed to celebrate that, I'm actually encouraged to forget it exists. I'm encouraged to apologize for it. And it's just a glaring double standard. I think that's most evident when it comes to like universities. And I think Charlie hits the nail on the head there.
I think it's extremely problematic when you yourself can't even talk about this, because the moment you talk about this, oh, watch out, he's going to be a schnazi, or he's going to love the Austrian painter. It's like we can't even have these discussions. Matter of fact, I'll even bring up a point that I brought up. That's a notion. And we always need to reference something to point to as far as like, okay, what's a good hypothetical? Let's say I identify as black. Whatever, right? So, and what you're talking about is arbitrary positions that the liberals move from one goalpost at a university to the next. It's arbitrary. It's not consistent. There's no grounding in this at all, because it's how I feel, felt, found. That's all this is. But moving on to this, it's like I can open black-owned barbershop, right? Black-owned, whatever. Celebrate it. Try to do the same, Ben. See, let's, you know what I'm saying? The problem with this is like we can talk about things that are obviously well known, but it hurts people's feelings. Like, let's say if I duplicate myself and there's like 50 Martes that move into a neighborhood, property value might go down. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, this is what's going to happen. So it's like if you demarcate to something, like we're talking about like the distinction between all of this, a lot of this is just pattern recognition, but for some reason, math is now racist because of this. But we're going to move on with this, with how math is becoming racist, with Brandon Johnson in Chicago, who is the biggest race card puller in history of Chicago's history. Well, actually, somebody else might take the cake, but right now he's the current person right now. So I'll even ask you, Vic, do you get maybe accused of possibly being white sometimes?
I've done that, like specifically online. Like I will like defend Trump or something like that, or my political positions, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're just a white supremacist, blah blah." And I'm like, I'm not even white. Like, you don't even know who I am, but you're assuming that because of who I support and my politics, you're already assuming I'm a certain race. And then I'll get like, "Well, you're stupid because you're just going to get deported." I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a citizen. I was born and raised here. My parents were born and raised here. I'm good. I'm not going to get deported.
Well, real quick,
to that point,
if I ask Ben real quick, just to interject real quick, if I ask Ben and I tell you, Vic, I said he looks like the guy from Russia's son who came over to box. Like, he looks like he could be Ivan Drago's son. I'm not even kidding. You look like the American dream, as far as if anybody said man and white picket fence and all this. Like, stereotypically, I would say that. But there's a lot of truth that is in stereotypes. But if I said this and we went out to your history and your cultural heritage and you training for this fight and all this, it's like, but you're not Ivan Drago. You're not even Russian or any of this stuff. But if you talk about your heritage, which is, like, I'm not. Some reason that's.
Oh, there he is.
For some reason that's bad. But if I talk about my black heritage and the struggles leading up to the fight and everything, and talk about my ethnicity and all that, that's accepted. But Ben can't do the same thing, because for some reason it's blasphemous for some reason to American society. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to point out to Vic's point there that it's kind of ironic that like Western Europeans and Americans, Australians are really the least racist people like in the world. Like unironically, like the only population that's getting called racist like are the least racist people. And like this was very evident when Japanese Twitter went like viral. I don't know if you guys saw this a couple weeks back, but like, I mean, Japanese Twitter started to go viral all over the app. And like they were just like throwing around like the hard R and like left and right, like saying like get out of our store, you know what? Like it was just like live videos of like young girl, like 18, 19-year-old girls like saying this to like black men and stuff. Like, and that is like very, that's very common in a lot of cultures that are non-white. And it's like, it's just ironic to me that like we are literally like just objectively, and actually there's been a lot of studies on this. There's been a ton of studies on particularly like relation to like ethnicity and tribalism, and it's always the Western European and American ethnicities that are the least tribal when it comes to their own people. In fact, they're almost like blind to it. That's because that's what we've been fed, right? We've been fed to be completely blind to this. You know, race doesn't even exist, but then it does exist because you have to apologize for it, but it doesn't actually exist. It's like this total schizophrenic nonsense. Arbitrary. Yeah, exactly. And exactly. Depending on the context, it's arbitrary. So yeah, all this to say, I just find it ironic that like I come from the population that is literally the least racist in the entire world, and yet we're the only ones that get called racist.
you know, it's funny. I'll even say this real quick because it's the funny thing about this, Vic, is like I can have a conversation with Ben, and I can say things he can't. For instance, I can spout facts, but he'll get demonized for saying the same facts. Like, for instance, this is going to sound really super racist right now.
Oh boy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
He's about to He's like, oh shit.
And I'm going to make this statement, but I'm going to ask, how am I wrong? I'm going to ask both of you if I'm wrong about this. If you go to any nation, the browner the nation gets, the dirtier it gets, meaning the streets are more dirty, the infrastructure is more run down, but the whiter the nation gets, there's better infrastructure. We're leaning more towards aerospace. The streets are actually more clean. There's less trash, things like this. And this is just a skin complexion thing, right? But why is that the case following suit? Do you think this is cultural? What is this? But off of the base of the question, like the hypothetical I gave you, which isn't hypothetical, is that true? Mostly? Am I wrong for saying that? Am I wrong for saying that? And am I lying for saying that?
Well, I mean, so I would say there's a correlation between IQ. So first of all, there's a couple things going on here, right? So
IQ.
There's obviously racial disparity in IQ, and a lot of this is actually a result of inbreeding. So inbreeding has been demonstrated, to have a negative impact on IQ, like substantially. And so like when you have like, especially like Muslim populations, where it's like almost like inbreeding is almost encouraged. Like you have certain countries like Somalia where like inbreeding is over 50%, which is just absolutely insane to me. And that has a drastic impact on IQ. So like, for example, right. So, and this is one of the reasons why people hate Japan, is because Japan is an example of a non-white country, but it's very clean. It's very civilized, has very little actually influence from like Western Europe, but because of their IQ, because they don't encourage inbreeding, their IQ is actually substantially high, and so they produce a very beautiful society that people want to visit, and that of course, just like a lot of the Western nations, is under attack by mass migration, and they had to really get more strict with this because they were getting replaced too. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you see it. I would say it's a correlation between IQ and then the societies it produces.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on that note, we're going to go to a quick 45-second commercial break. Ben knows all about this commercial, by the way. They sponsor this show, so let's go into it real quick. Okay, we are sponsored by Logo Cinema. Ben is very familiar with them now, as am I. So yeah,
those guys are great.
Yeah, definitely. So moving back to this, I think it's very funny that when I state these facts, right, this could be pattern recognition, things like that. For some reason, that's racist, but it's going to lean towards math, but I'm going to play the rest of this video real quick as we dive deeper into this autopsy of this crap woke agenda that we're dealing with. Here you go.
And then I want to be done with this whole conversation. So for people to come at me and say that I made those comments because I'm a racist, first of all, black people can't be racist. But that's the farthest thing from my mind.
I wonder whether media.
So, and that's a massive problem. When I've debated black people all the time, they think that, well, you need systematic power and you need this position to hold in society. No, you don't. Because I'd even give the argument of hypothetical of a white person walking through the projects, which the project is a system. Blacks own a monopoly of force in the system. And a person's walking by and they say, hey, white boy. White boy is actually a racial slur. But for some reason, we're okay with that. We can say people are crackers online and do all this. They don't get demonized for this. But if you say the N-word, demonetized, deplatform, everything else. It's crazy because it's so lopsided in the media that if I talk about this, the guy walking through the projects in this hypothetical gets mugged. They say, hey, white boy, take his wallet. How is that not racism underneath this hypothetical? Because you have a system, you have a monopoly on force, and a person that's a minority in a new system with power. Because they have power in this system, monopoly of force. So it's like the whole racist thing in blacks can't be racist is ridiculous. It's an inversion to go ahead and just point the same finger at people. And what they've done is they've taken this and they've weaponized it against the very people and turned into whatever they thought that they were blaming. That's crazy.
Yeah, and also I have a couple things to say about that. So first of all, it seems to be an inversion of the entire Christian paradigm that was the justification for why we found racism to be evil in the first place, right? I mean, Christianity, it was really, Western European Christians that were able to identify this before literally anyone in history, because everyone participated in some sort of discrimination. Usually it was discrimination of the tribe next door. That was the extension of discrimination, let alone somebody of a different skin tone than you. That's even more discrimination, right? That was how most of human society operated for pretty much all of history. And it was the Western European Christians that were like, hey, wait a second, this seems wrong. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And now, right now, that's actually weaponized against our population. And it's okay, well, from a Christian perspective, if we're going to reference St. Paul saying there's neither Jew nor Greek, and that's going to be our justification for why racism is a sin, because we're all equal under Christ, well, that means that this isn't about power hierarchies. If you have a view of a person that somehow subordinates them because of their race, it doesn't matter if you happen to be black, if you happen to be from a population that you believe has been marginalized more than other populations. From a Christian perspective, it shouldn't matter. It's still discrimination. It's still sinful. It's still wrong. So that's the first point. Second thing I want to say is it's very evident that we can see this very explicitly in the judicial system. Particularly this last week, we saw this with I don't know if you guys saw the stuff with Chud the Builder. And listen, I'm not going to comment on his stuff, but what I will say is I saw the same week that all this stuff was happening. There was a judge that went viral she cut a young black man's sentence in half, who had literally committed forceful sexual assault against a young woman. And she cut his sentence in half because she felt he deserved a second chance. And it's okay, that's insane to me, right? So, and then the builder just got a $1.2 million bail, right? And it was because out of self-defense, it seems like it was self-defense. He shot a black man who was attacking him. Now, the reason why, and people have compared his case to other cases of young black men who literally killed somebody in cold blood, and their bail is $200K. But the reason why Chud's bail is so high is because his whole platform was calling black people the N-word. He would go around and basically he would just people, they would come up to him because they knew who he was, and he would say they're chimping out, quoting, that's what he would say. And
way to protect yourself. You're good.
So yeah. So anyways, I just think like his case is like an excellent, double standard, for this particular question.
It even shows the power of how we made the N-word so powerful. Like I heard of another case recently where like a black guy like stabbed this white guy. And after he stabbed the white guy, like white guy, obviously, he'd been stabbed and he was like, and he called him the N-word. And I believe the jury like let the black guy off because the white guy said the N-word. And it's like,
that's
wait
correct.
a minute. Yeah, he just literally got stabbed. And him saying the N-word is just as bad as almost getting murdered? Like, that's insane.
Well, and what was worse about that situation, that was up in the PNW somewhere. It was like Oregon or Washington. And what was even worse about that particular situation was he didn't even send the N-word. He didn't even call him the N-word before he stabbed him. He called him the N-word after he stabbed him. So the crime was already committed. But because he called him the N-word, the guy literally didn't get charged with assault. And it's like, so that to me is just an openly anti-white agenda within the judicial system.
So I do want to bring up this next video because it rolls right into our talking point right now. This is, by the way, viewer discretion advised for this story.
This is Dustin Wakefield, a 21-year-old from Castle Rock, Colorado, who was on vacation in Miami with his wife and their 1-year-old son, Eli. One day down on South Beach, they decided to grab lunch at a nice little Mexican restaurant, and in the middle of their meal, a stranger walked up. Everybody meet Tamarius Blair Davis Jr., the person who walked up to the table and interrupted the lunch. Tamarius, for no reason at all, decided to just pull out a firearm and start waving it in the air, eventually pointing it straight at Eli, the 1-year-old baby. Dustin then got up and put himself between Tamarius and his son, begging him to spare his life. He said, quote, "Please don't shoot my son, he's just a baby." Tamarius then pulled the trigger several times, just unloading a magazine into Dustin, which ended up taking his life as he protected his son. Davis, when arrested by the police, said that he, quote, randomly chose to target Dustin Wakefield and his family, and had even attacked another person just a few hours prior. Now, you would think that this would be a bigger story. A wife is now without a husband, and a 1-year-old has to grow up without his father. But for some reason, you really only get a couple local papers, Miami Herald, South Florida, NBC6. Almost like the media doesn't really want to cover this story for some reason, as if it doesn't fit their narrative or something.
So the next topic that we're going to talk about too, that I'd like to kind of run on a tangent on, white silence. So white silence, Ben, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, like me in my barbershop, like I can't talk about things that are facts. Like you can't, but I can. I can speak about all the facts possible. I can talk about per capita, but somehow that's racist and everything else. It's just ridiculous in these debates. And I find out in the debate sphere, even Vic knows, he's reviewed debates where I'm saying that black women are too masculine. But if you did this debate, you would be demonized for that. And how I destroyed her in this debate is because killing is a very masculine thing to do, right? Taking life and doing this, like women delete the most babies that are black, right? More than any other culture. And when women are single moms, more than any other culture, black women, you have to be the mom and dad. That's pretty masculine. She got eviscerated in this. But if you had the same debate prompt with those facts at the ready, I guarantee you probably have death threats. You probably have all these racial slurs in your comments. Your DMs will be flooded with some BS. This is crazy. So there's white silence going on right now and in the media. So when we have the case of this black guy targeting specifically white people, he admitted that because the guy said, well, they're white. That's it. And he targets white people for some reason. There's a hush in the media. Why do you suspect this is, Ben?
Well, I mean, we can unpack why we're in this position we are in as far as the anti-white, it's very clear. I mean, like no other race can be thrown around in academia, talking about extermination. I mean, there's videos within academia of professors talking openly about exterminating white people. I have several compilations that show all the articles that make it this, open. And so, the anti-white sort of narrative is very obvious, I think, at this point. I think a lot of people, like even people on the left that I talk to, acknowledge it, but they seem to think it's actually a good thing because, these are like reparations or something for past sins. So it's like, it seems like now people are actually acknowledging it. One thing I do want to say, that before we kind of dive into unpacking how we got here is one of the reasons why I speak the way I do about this issue, because I'm very careful about the way I talk about it. And, I still get lied about, but I am very careful because I do want to bring in, I really want to help like normies, sort of understand this issue. And I think there are a lot of people that sort of, they discover this and there's white people who do this. They'll discover this issue and then they'll just go, they'll just kind of go all out. In the military, we used to say, go high and to the right, and basically just go extremist. And what that does is it actually plays right into their hand. Because now they can throw on the Wikipedia page that you're a white supremacist and all these things of this nature. And so one of the things that I really try to do with my platform is really like demonstrate that like, hey, my position is not extreme. Like, gosh, it's pretty actually simple that like, I just am asking for equal treatment for my ethnicity that everybody else gets. So like, let me give you an example of this, right? So recently there was a Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. 1965 was probably the worst year in American history. In fact, the entire 1960s were just absolutely horrible. But one of the things that was passed was the Voting Rights Act. And what the Voting Rights Act allowed for, that the Supreme Court just determined was unconstitutional, was what's called racial gerrymandering. And so in the South, you actually had redistricting based on race, where they would artificially boost Black and Hispanic communities, and so the Supreme Court just looked at this case in Louisiana where they were trying to boost Louisiana from one Black district to two black districts, and they determined this was unconstitutional. This was a violation of the 14th Amendment, right? And so what we've noticed is that a lot of these civil rights quote unquote policies are not actually about equality. They're about being anti-white. The whole point of them is to disproportionately affect white people. And thankfully, the Supreme Court was able to acknowledge this, because the reality is all we're asking for is equal treatment. Like no one's asking to rig the system for white people. Like no one's saying that. Like we just want to be treated like everybody else. Can I talk about my racial heritage? Can I talk about, all the things that are celebrated by everybody else? Why can't I just talk about that? And so like, to me, that's not extreme. Like to me, that's like basic common sense, if anything. Right. And so that's why I really care a lot about the framing here. And I know this is a tangent from your question, but I do think framing is important. I think framing is really important, particularly for the white people that are listening. Like the tendency when you hear these things is to get angry, right? And it's okay to be angry because our people are being wiped off the face of the earth, and that's not good. And God doesn't want that. And so we need to, if we become angry, if we become violent, if we become extreme, that's playing right into their hand. And I think we saw this, a little bit of a taste of this with like J6, for example. Like, first of all, most of them were probably feds. But like J6, I think was a great example of like, we kind of played right into their hand, right? That was exactly what they wanted. And we're going to be hearing about J6 for like 30 years. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why like, we just can't do that. We have to have the self-control, the discipline to control our rhetoric, control our framing, help people understand, get them on our side. And that's only going to be able to be done, via the framing that I'm sort of advocating for.
The funny thing is, you bring up framing. Well, let's shift the framing over into the Black community, and let's go ahead and make this relational to your topic. Me being labeled white is in a disparaging way. I'll tell you how. The moment I speak truth, and I don't want to say truth to power, it sounds retarded at this point, because it's been overused by the left and people like that. So if I speak about things that are what it is claimed, things that are happening right now, right? Not what ought to happen, but what is happening. I get demonized. I get called Uncle Tom. I get called a coon, everything else. And I'll say, well, hold on, because I'm grammatically correct about this. And, my grammatic precision is on point in debates and things like this. You're talking white. Who are you trying to do? Are you cooning for the white man? So what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, you don't want to be like that because that somehow is bad. But yet, if I move closer to where this Black cultural agenda is, my dad doesn't come back home. Like there's certain things that happen with that. My credit score gets dropped below the basement. Like all these other things happen. But when people talk about stereotypes, the reason why stereotypes are very common, and you peel back the layers, there's a layer of truth in there. That's the reason why stereotypes exist, because there's a sliver of truth in there. If you put, even comedians, when they joke about things, the reason why they're funny is because you can see the truth in the matter, the truth of the joke, right? So when we talk about these things, they're used against us. So there's an inversion happening in the black community where it's anti-white amongst other blacks. I get labeled all the time. You're not one of us. I get ostracized from the black community. The moment I speak about truth and how, maybe there should be a moratorium on dating black women because I don't want my child to pass away. Like it's things like this. Like even when I utter things like this, just to start a conversation, ostracized, you're not one of us and all this. And what does that mean when they say not one of us? You must be white. Well, what's bad about that? Aerospace engineering, culture, which they say, where does the waltz come from? Things like even the most generic things. Like, yes, you're talking about empires being built. You're talking about all this. Oh, you just want to negate all that because of your limited knowledge that you have right now and support DEI, which is actually anti-white and very racist rhetoric that people bring up. And they lean towards that. Well, I just want to get in and be a brain surgeon and work on Ben's heart just because of my complexion. Doesn't matter whether or not I'm capable of saving his life, which is crazy. I know I just threw a bunch at you right now, but it's like the inversion of this framing happens from goalpost to goalpost. And we see this culturally all the time. Yet if I go to Korea, if I go to Asia, they're the most racist compared to us, but their streets are more clean than us. You see the correlation? Like you go over there, they have a social credit score. You have to act a certain way. Oh, well, they wonder why there's no blacks in that culture. It's like, well, it's not the blacks, it's the culture. For some reason, we accept less than we deserve, but we're okay with that, which is a very odd premise. Weird.
And it also promotes more like, poor behavior, because if even being well spoken is considered white, then all it does is promote like poor grammar, poor language, poor behavior within the black culture, which does nothing to improve the black culture at all. It just keeps a really low standard.
Yeah. I'll say a couple of things about this. So I think a lot about, as someone who cares about being a future politician, potentially, I think a lot about like policies that would kind of help with these things. And to be honest with you, this problem that you're sort of addressing, call it a social credit score or whatever that, that other societies do a better job of that we don't. Really, all we have to do is enforce the law. I mean, I think it's interesting that, it's interesting that like, civilized people. Now, even if I say civilized people, there's like an image that like pops in people's head, right, of who I'm talking about. Like, ask yourself why that is. Isn't that interesting, right? That an image pops in of a civilized person. But if a civilized person is driving to work, right, and like they're getting speeding tickets, but like there's entire like sections of, the hood where like there are no cops, right? Because they're terrified to go in there. Like that is a huge problem. And we're not directing our resources like the right direction. And like I'll be frank, I've said this for a long time. I think we need to go Nayib Bukele on our crime here in the United States. What he was able to do in El Salvador, and he turned the most dangerous country in the world into the safest country in this entire half of the world. Right? In like 3 years, he did this. And he just did it by sending basically the military into these, gang areas, right? These gang neighborhoods, these gang dominated areas. And it's actually interesting when he talks about this, he said we had our plan, but like we literally, the night that it happened, like we all got like all the leadership in the nation got together and we prayed. He said they actually like got together and they prayed together because they knew it would take a miracle to actually, because what was happening was the gangs were basically fighting back and they started killing innocent civilians and things of that nature. And they had no choice but to keep their foot on the gas and basically, increase their reinforcements. And, but he said it was, at the end of the day, it was a miracle, and, and they were able to do it. Right. And they were able to do it just by enforcing the law. Like that's all we have to do. And we have the infrastructure to do it. Don't tell me we don't. Trust me. I was in the military. I know that we can send our boys into these neighborhoods and they would do a phenomenal job. And actually they'd be chomping at the bit to do it. So we could totally do that. And no one's talking about race. I don't even have to mention race. I'm just talking about high crime areas. And that's going to disproportionately affect certain races. I don't even have to say that. But like, that's right. Because that's who's committing the majority of these types of crimes. Listen, if I was in charge, like one of the things that I would say is like, look, I want a 18-year-old attractive woman to be able to walk down the darkest alley at 3 o'clock in the morning and be totally safe. That's how safe I want my country to be. And it really wouldn't take that much to make that happen. It really wouldn't. We could totally do it. The other thing, of course, is the welfare state, which I feel like that's been a conservative talking point for decades, but it's still true. Like, it's still true, like, that the welfare state is incentivizing, single parent homes, when in fact we should be doing the opposite. We should be incentivizing children in wedlock. That's what we should be doing.
Yes.
So like we should be literally paying people to have kids. Like, that's what we should be doing in wedlock. Like, yeah, if you are married and you have a child, like, we'll give you a 20% discount on this new build house, right, or something of that nature, right?
Tax incentive, something. Yeah.
So easy, right? So in my opinion, that's how the welfare state should look instead of its current setup. But yeah.
I think it's extremely important, especially when, I grew up in a welfare state, Section 8 household. When we talk about this, well, when I say the welfare state, the state of affairs that this was in. And the problem with this is like, Charlie's right about this. Charlie Kirk, by the way. Civil rights is probably the worst thing that happened to black folk, because what happened is it's been co-opted by LGBTQ. Everybody else co-opted this. And they were like, no, I identify as DI, and everybody else co-opted this. I did a civil rights debate, and Vic covered that as well too. But the problem with this is like, we had more nuclear families in black homes before this happened, before we got handouts and everything else. Growing up in not just 1 second about me, if my dad had moved in, the state would have cut her off from the food stamps and everything else. That prevented my dad from moving back in. Well, they've incentivized the opposite. So it's like, for us to get handouts prevents us from, it's like, you need to be able to get the opportunity to fail. Unless you get this, you don't develop an immune system. You're never going to bounce back. You're not going to develop the armament to have the fortitude to come back from something. And you're going to be forever handicapped and weak because of this. And the black community has stifled itself by its own rhetoric by saying, oh, that's too white for our blood. Wait, hold on. You mean too much aerospace infrastructure, empires built, like all this other shit. It's like, I can talk about that. It's like, how is that bad? But it's like, this is the most mundane, stupidest point that people take. And it's insane. I have more of the video, by the way, but sure. Vic, what do you think about that?
I actually had a question for Ben about the military going into these bad areas. I think that would be a great idea. The only problem I see with that is the liberals freaking out. I mean, we kind of seen the reaction when it comes to ICE going into the neighborhoods trying to get these deportations.
That's
and then
true.
You got the Renee Good situation and the Alex Preddy stuff. How do you think that would fly if a president should try to do that?
Oh, I mean, yeah, they're going to react to it, of course. But I mean, I think there was counter protests around this in El Salvador as well. But like, I mean, the reality is, like, it's one of those things where we've gotten too comfortable with like mob rule in the United States.
Yeah. I agree.
And this is not how the country was founded. A lot of people don't know this, but like, everybody knows about when the women got the right to vote, but what they don't know, and Andrew Wilson has pointed this out, is actually most men did not have the right to vote until about 20 years before women got the right to vote.
Yep.
It was a very small minority of men, particularly land owning men, that was the democracy, right? So like no founder of any Western society has seen democracy to be mob rule. Mob rule is a disaster. It's easily hijacked. In fact, we just saw this yesterday with Thomas Massey's election. We saw how easily people are swayed by propaganda. By $50 million. It was a total of $50 million if you include the ad money, right? So that was spent on this primary in Kentucky, right? And that is not democracy. Sorry, that's not democracy. That is something different. That is corruption. It's disgusting. I think if you're going to do this democracy thing, you got to get rid of lobbying and things of that nature. But anyways, that's a tangent. To answer your question, you just got to do it, man. I mean, like, and you got to steer into it. One of the things that I think Trump did wrong, and I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but the former the head of the Border Patrol who was in Minnesota, Greg Bovino or something like that.
Oh yeah,
you guys know what I'm talking about?
Bongino.
Yeah, Bongino.
No, not Bongino.
Oh.
Bongino is the FBI.
Yeah. Okay, FBI. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's Bovino or something. But anyway, you guys know who I'm talking about. You guys know who I'm talking about. The Border Patrol guy that was in Minnesota, like he said that like we should not have pulled out of Minnesota. Like we needed to keep our foot on the gas. And actually, I think Trump made a huge mistake by pulling out of Minnesota and allowing Walz to do that. That also another point with that, though, I think state leadership matters a lot because governors do have a lot of authority because they have control over the National Guard. So Walz was talking about, activating the National Guard. Right. And so and look, like you can impose sanctions on these states. So like if that were to happen and like the governors are fighting back, you just sanction the royal shit out of them until they, there's things you can do. Like there are plenty of things you can do to make these people cooperate. And people are going to say that's like fascist or something. And like, to be frank, I don't care what you call it. Yeah. I just want our women to stop getting raped. I want people to stop getting robbed. I want people to stop getting murdered. Like these are things that I want to end. And I don't care what you call me because I'm going to try to end it. So it's like, you can call it fascist, you call it whatever you want, but like you're going to call me fascist regardless. That's the thing too.
Yeah.
A lot of these people need to start to, I know I had that whole rant about framing, but there is an extent where it's like, we're going to get called these things no matter what we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't freak out too much about it. You know what I mean?
I am going to say something that's pretty controversial. Ben, I do think it's time for a second American Revolution in this country. And I know that sounds really controversial for me to say.
I do not endorse violence of any sort. I just would like to say that. I only endorse self-defense. Only self-defense. No, I just have to say it.
The revolution that I'm talking about is kind of like the opening of
cultural revolution.
Eyes. Yeah, cultural revolution. That's what I'm talking about. The second revolution that we're talking about is a cultural revolution. We need that desperately. Let me go ahead and bring to the stage this video. I need to skip past a certain point because it gets to the heart of the second topic that we're going to discuss. Let me skip past this real quick. Give me 2 seconds. Quick. All right. Damn, I guess he's silent here. But anyways, Brandon Johnson was saying that when you lock people up in prison, it's racist because, locking people up hasn't worked. Prisons are racist somehow. And that's what he was saying. For some reason, the audio cut out here. But let's fast forward real quick.
Way out of this.
Here we go. This is really spicy right here. The next piece of content we're going to get to.
White people, I need you to know that your money will not assuage you from your guilt. You cannot pay your way out of this. There aren't enough reparations in the world that you can pay us. And so you think.
Look at how the liberal at the top is bobbing her head and agreeing. This is insane. Yeah. So it's like we have this populist. But let's continue real quick because it gets even crazier.
Because you write a check or you slide me something in Venmo that you're absolved and you can tell somebody, well, I gave Dr. Blay $100. I'm not racist. Dr. Blay is going to spend your $100 and still tell you that you're racist. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Insane, bro.
I can't even like watch that. It's like so cringe.
I need you to be able to process this a little bit. I know my internal server's almost broken from seeing that. The crazy thing is you have two different things that are happening there. There's a dichotomy that's happening on the upper screen. It's almost like a form of self-hatred. Like I don't know how else to even think about this, to process this. I'm like, hey, that's what I would register this as. And on the bottom part of the screen, it's the promotion of you should hate yourself despite money. So you take money out. Now all of a sudden you don't have a reason to hate anymore. It's just because of the thing that happened. Yet, if you're going to talk about reparations, which wouldn't work, there's not a white person in America that owned a slave back then that's still alive today. Who would you take that from? They promote illegal immigrants that come from the country. So you want that to come out of those people's pockets too that aren't even citizens. It's insane because it's a really asinine approach to take. But back to the white person at the top, the celebration was just insane. How do we reconcile this as a country to see that, say that that's becoming more normative now in the country, and then also say that there's a populace of people that say, hey, I'm white and I hate myself, literally.
Yeah. So a couple things to unpack there, because that's just nothing short of a traitor. That liberal on the top there, and it's just disgusting too. It's just like gross to watch. But I mean, it's really a testimony though. I mean, I actually am glad that professor said it. It's like, yeah, you could do all the things I ask, and I'm still going to call you racist. It's like, okay, then why the hell would I do it? Like, that's how any like self-respecting person should be like. So you're going to call me racist whether or not I do these things. Why in the living hell would I do that then? Why would I do anything to help you? And oh, by the way, like, you mentioned that not only did a tiny minority of white Americans actually own slaves, but there was also a black population that owned slaves.
Yes.
And in Africa, when we showed up, like, they were already running slave auctions. They had been running slave auctions for 1,000 years when we showed up. And actually, we were the ones who had to go back after the transatlantic slave trade ended at the hands of William Wilberforce, a Christian Englishman. After that happened, the French and English went back to Africa to pry the slaves out of the African king's hands because they were clinging to slavery. They refused to free their slaves in Africa. And we had to go back. The French and the English went back and freed the slaves living there. And so it's like the notion that this is some like white crime is just absolute utter nonsense. The Arab slave trade lasted longer. The numbers are about the same, right? And we can get into some of maybe the disproportionate tribe ownership of the slave ships. And then, I mean, you can look at I believe it was the Dutch slave trade. They were closed on Jewish holidays. So, I mean, just like they're all objective facts. You can look this stuff up.
It's so true.
I'm not making it up, right? You can look everything I just said. I encourage everybody to fact check. Like, all of these things are true, but you're not taught any of that in school. You're not taught any of that in school. That doesn't show up on, Django Unchained. Nope. That kind of stuff doesn't show up there, right? It's the same anti-white propaganda blaming us for crimes that, yes, a certain population of whites did commit, but it was a minority population and everybody else did it too. And we were the ones to end it. We were the only ones to end it. There's actively 7 million slaves in Africa today.
Yeah.
2026. Exactly. But nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. So it's like, give me a freaking break, man, with this reparations nonsense. And you're going to continue to call me racist after Venmoing $100 or whatever. Like, get out of here. Like, it's just nonsense.
Well, here's the other thing I'll go on. Like, think about this. Like, the reparations really doesn't make any sense when we dwindle this down. It's like, I can say I'm Choctaw Indian. I'm mixed with all this other stuff. Well, the black lineage that I do have, it's like, okay, so if I sell you Mercedes and it's got a Honda engine and maybe a Nissan bumper, but I'm only buying the Mercedes part, is that like fraction off? Is my reparations now like 14% now? That's where it gets really stupid and asinine, when it's like, how much do you get? Like, if we're really going to be technical here, this would never happen in all actuality because we have mixed people, things like this. Let's just start all over. That's what I would say. And you need to be a contributing member of society. Here's another thing to your point. There's reframing of history and revisionist history. When I was growing up, I've heard about the Jays being put in ovens, things like this, and all this other stuff happening, right? We understand that things have happened, but I've never heard of the Bolshevik Revolution. But those are a ton of whites having to renounce their faith or die. Like, this happened. That's never brought up in school, yet it's one of the largest massacres in history that's ever happened. But they want to talk about, Rwanda, apartheid. Oh, it's so bad over there, but Bolshevik never gets brought up. Like, it's crazy how people part and parcel things and omit parts of history, Ben. That's the crazy part in classes everywhere.
Yeah, and it's a type of it's like a type of class warfare, I think, that it's sort of like like you talked about earlier with social credit score. Like, in this case, it's a social credit score of like, which minorities can you claim, right, to sort of boost your social credit. And like, I'm at the bottom of the food chain because I'm a white Christian man, straight, married to a white woman.
You're most racist. That's what you are.
I'm like the bottom. I'm like the bottom of it, right? So, and then you have a black lesbian woman, and if they're trans, that really helps out too.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's
the
like,
trans.
you know, that's
in a
sort of
wheelchair, you know. Yeah.
Oh, blue hair. You got to throw the blue hair.
Blue hair. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is a social credit system, and it's, you know, at this point it's abundantly obvious. I don't know how anyone could deny it. So now it's just a matter of like, how do we approach dealing with it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I think, you know, people can ask questions like, what's more important, honesty or transparency? I'd say both. You can't have one without the other. And if you take one, an omission is still a lie, no matter what. And they're doing this in schools everywhere. You could say, well, you know, I never learned about the Bolshevik Revolution. Matter of fact, the only way that I found about orthodoxy is through Andrew Wilson, and he didn't even lead with Christianity. And it's like, why is so much of our history being hidden behind us? Well, there's a lot of suppression that happens. And a lot of this suppression creates division because they want to cattle prod you into certain sects, subsets of cultures. And this causes so much division. And a lot of this division is aimed at being anti-white. If you notice, there's a correlation across the table. And it's like, if you look at movies in history, like you can never say something. You could say Mexican pride. I can say black pride. Vic can say, oh, there's Hispanic pride. Oh, your turn, Ben. Let's see how that works for you. It's like, you can't say that. And to me, that's the craziest thing.
It would get clipped. It would, unironically, if I said it, it would get clipped, and it would be like, it would like run all over Twitter, and like, it would be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, let me give you an example of this actually. So
exactly.
I think it was my third episode of my show. I titled it Orthodoxy, the White Race, and Father Seraphim Rose. And the very phrase, the white race, had people losing their minds. I did end up changing it only because YouTube was like, my buddy was like, YouTube's gonna nuke you for that. So I was like, okay, I'll change it because of YouTube. But like people were losing their minds just over the phrase, the white race. I was getting called a white supremacist for using the phrase. Like, what are you talking about? White supremacy. I'm just saying the white race. Like, that's all I said. And, you know, in the video, I was talking about some of the things that St. Seraphim Rose talks about when it comes to race, because he says that the deracination of race is actually it is a Marxist idea, and it is from the Antichrist. That's what he says. Another double standard here that you pointed out is like, if I were to deny, you know, some white genocide, like the Armenian genocide, for example, like, am I labeled an Armenian genocide denier? Like, am I ostracized from society? Are there any countries where it's illegal to deny the Armenian genocide? Right? Like, no, there's not. Like, you know, at least as far as I know. And so it's like, if I were to make a video like refuting the Armenian genocide and saying like, you know, this is nonsense because this, that, and the other, right? I would not get ostracized. I would be fine, right? And so it's just very clearly there's a particular genocide that you can't talk about in any sort of critical sense, that happened to be, the very number was predicted in various Jewish texts beforehand, right? Like, you can't talk about that, right? You can't talk about that at all. You can't have an objective approach to it, right? Like Pat Buchanan does. Pat Buchanan does an excellent job, right? In his assessment of World War II, and he got labeled a Nazi. He got labeled a Nazi Holocaust denier, all these things. And he's just like, all he did was like take an objective look that was a little bit non-normative and like say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have gotten involved in this war. Like, it seems like the Soviets and the Nazis were going to destroy each other anyway. Like, why did we do this? You know, and he got labeled a Nazi for that. So it's like, and this is another thing with framing that I like to do. I like to kind of gaslight people a little bit. Like, oh, so you think the Soviets are the good guys. Yeah. I'm like, oh, so you think the Soviets are the good guys? And they're like, well, wait. I'm like, well, that's what you just said, right? Like, you know, and I'm over here. I'm just like, I think they're both bad. I don't side with either side. You know, I side with Codreanu and the Romanians. That's who I side with. And the Americans, the non-infiltrated Americans. That's who I side with. And I don't think we should have gotten involved. And so I kind of gaslight people. I'm like, oh, so you really think that the empire that killed 60 million people, that's the good guys? Okay. Makes sense, dude. Sure. You know what I mean? So yeah.
What you're doing is I wouldn't call it gaslighting as much as peeling back the layers through framing, and also finding a way to kind of like, I don't think Trojan horses are exactly bad, especially if it's for a good cause and you have a good notion of intention and integrity doing this. Like the outcome, if you think about this, you're saying, well, the outcome is I want to search for the truth, and I'm doing a fact-finding journey with this person in the midst of a conversation. I think that that's appropriate. Totally. I wouldn't even call that gaslighting. I think what you're doing is you're doing fact-finding. That's it. And to me, I think you got to do that. Like, people could say, well, what's a lie? You know, it's bad to lie. You can't lie to people. It's totally bad. And it's like, no, lying isn't a bad or good thing. And I can demonstrate why. If there was a PDF that was being interviewed by a detective, and he said, well, we saw you on the camera at 2 a.m. with Annalise. The camera doesn't work, whatever. But he admitted, he confessed to, you know, essaying a 12-year-old girl or something like that. I got the guy. But I had to use this tool, which is neither good or bad. Just depends on what means you're using this for. Is this for justice? Where's this leaning towards? Is this to go ahead and stop something that would be leading toward a propensity to commit further crimes as an individual on the streets, touching kids, things like this. So it's like we do this all the time in language. So that's why I don't think it's exactly gaslighting.
I say it in jest. I don't mean, I'm not actually gaslighting. I sort of say it in jest to flip the framing, because it really like makes people short circuit. Another thing that makes people short circuit
to sell it too.
Yeah. Well, another way that makes them short circuit is if you say, I think the Germans should have won World War I, because then World War II wouldn't have happened. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Like, wait. They're like, they don't know how to react to that. You know, they don't know how to react to that. So,
that's crazy. I've never heard.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right, let's continue on this next part of the video. This is, it's going to get hairier from here on. Just buckle up, Ben. This is going to be crazy. Right, here we go.
White people for slavery, I blame them for making it barbaric.
Yeah, because wait, hold on. I mean, white people were slaves. The barbarism white people experienced in like the Barbary slave trade, you could argue is worse than the slavery that African Americans experienced here in the United States. Africans in Africa were enslaving
She's like
other
crashing
Africans.
out.
They were super brutal in Africa.
Super crashing out.
In South America, you had Aztecs, you had the Incas, you had the Mayans. They were certainly some of them were cannibals. They were doing like child sacrifice. They had slaves. You see slavery in like almost all cultures throughout history. And it's actually white people who abolished slavery. Like the British spent tons
Not the
of
fact
money
checking on her
basically
phone.
going on the warpath to abolish slavery across the world.
I do agree that slavery existed outside of America. However, you did bring up the Aztecs in which they would do child sacrifices. However, they made it more common to eat and build us into furniture.
My gut
non sequitur, by the way. She's leaning towards more towards a non sequitur than anything else.
Here is to reject that this was like a really frequent or common practice where African Americans were made into lampshades or some shit.
Thanks. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, let's.
By the way, that clip that you're gonna play is the one I was referencing earlier. That one's
of course. I somehow inherently knew this, and I didn't. By the way, it's dumb for me to say that because there's no way I can inherently know that. But yeah, I'm going to play that clip, Ben. You're familiar from just seeing that 1 second of a frame of this, that what I'm going to play. We're going to dive into that as well, too, because that really points to the prompt that we have right here. Because this guy won't get demonized. He'll get celebrated for what he's. Matter of fact, let's go to it. Let's screw the whatever podcast thing. Well, let's go straight.
I think we hit the slavery issue hard earlier. We were talking about the double standard there. I mean, it's just crazy.
Let's go right to it. Let's let's go right to the heart of the matter. Here we go.
They're monitoring our people to try to prevent the one person from coming up with the one idea. And the one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem.
They're clapping.
Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem because they are going to kill us.
And you know what's funny about this? What's funny about this is like, how many black majority countries could he go move to if he wanted to? Like, if he really hates white people this much, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm not saying the whole like, I'm not saying the whole, send them back to Africa. I'm just saying, like, dude, like, you have plenty of countries where, your race is the majority, but you are choosing to live in a white majority country. Like, if you hate white people this much, why are you here? It's like the same thing with Ilhan Omar. Like, Ilhan Omar, I've played clips of her on my show where she literally says Somalia is for the Somalis. She's like a Somalian nationalist, right, when it comes to her homeland. But then here she says the idea that America is a white country is a just horribly disgusting idea. And she said that white supremacy is the biggest threat to America. And it's like, do you realize that you can take one little plane ride back to Somalia and you can live there? Like, that's your like homeland. And it's like, no one is keeping you here in this horrible country that supposedly is full of white supremacy, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. It's funny because I've actually seen videos from like or stories from women who are like black women who've like moved to Africa and then they end up hating it there. And then they'll make a video saying, I actually don't like this. And it's like, yeah, like you don't realize how good you actually have it here. And then you go back to Africa and you see how terrible it is. And you're like, oh yeah, shit. Maybe it's a good thing I lived in this white majority country.
One of the policies I want to, this is sort of in jest as well, but that I want to implement is that if any white person converts to Islam, they're going to be sent to a Muslim country. They just have to live there for like 3 years. And then they come back. And if they still want to be Muslim, we'll let them be Muslim privately. But that's the requirement. You have to go live in a Muslim country for 3 years if you decide to convert to Islam and you live in the West. So yeah, it's because all it takes is being exposed to these nations and like you realize how good you have it. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's the same. Like I've heard people say like, man, if you want to get rid of these communists, just have implement communism for a good 5-10 years. And all these people will all of a sudden hate communism.
Yeah.
And
Well, did you see
how terrible it is?
Did you see the New Yorkers are already like rioting against Mamdani and stuff?
Oh,
like,
they're
already crashing out over him.
Yeah.
It's like he just got in office like a couple months ago.
And they already hate it. Well, yeah. They're idiots. I mean, I can't believe that's what democracy does.
Yeah.
You know, you vote in terrible leadership like that. And that's hilarious.
One of the analogies I give of democracy is like if I were to drive my truck into a small town and everybody in the town votes that the truck now belongs to the town, right? Like that's democracy, right? But is that fair? Is that right? Like obviously not. And so it's very obvious that there's times where it can be abused. And, you know, I think in general, it can be a good thing if it's a particular population that's voting, right? Particularly of a certain IQ. But unfortunately it can be easily abused. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I think that's bad. I mean, I just walk back at it, go ahead and take a piss. But anyways, back to this. If you look at this, a lot of people are fleeing from their countries that literally they trash and then come here to try to seek a more advanced civilization, modernity, meaning like maybe cleaner streets, things like this. But you bring up a good point, Ben, when you talk about actually enforcing these laws to prevent this. And Vic, you also bring up a good counterpoint. Like, of course, Renee, good. This is hard to do. But meanwhile, let's go ahead and point to places like Qatar. Let's point to places like Dubai. I can fall asleep on the street with, $1 million on my chest. I would never get robbed. Why is that? Well, Ben knows the answer to this, obviously. And it's like, that's because they've enforced this. They've created a cultural normative enforcement policy to where it's like, oh, we know what happens when that happens. Like the public has to have a certain respect for the law. We don't have that here. We haven't integrated this. That's why when we have this distinction where we now have ICE agents. I used to work for Homeland Security, by the way, in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement for a while, by the way. Paramilitary, you're military, not the same thing, but they tend to funnel a lot of military into this occupation I was in. But if I was working with ICE, they'd call me a coon. We just witnessed on a video, one of the ICE agents that was black called an Uncle Tom. So it's like, okay, are you saying this is a white person, demonizing him for acting white? So it's like law enforcement is now getting slowly dismantled through that propaganda to where, oh, you're bad for doing your job now. So they're constantly pushing back against this. Meanwhile, you don't see this in Qatar. You don't see this in Dubai, any of this other stuff, because they put the kibosh on it, not to bring a Jewish reference into this, but that's also the next topic too. But I think it's just insane that we can't enforce this because we're constantly fighting the cultural narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a problem. Like you said, it's very simple. Like all we have to do is actually enforce the law. That's really all we have to do. And unfortunately, that's like too much to ask for. And it's funny. You pointed out the fact that you would get called names for being part of VHS. It's like, to me, it's funny because you'll have people calling like ICE agents, Nazis for like being part of ICE and stuff, and they'll be like Hispanic or they'll be black, and it's like,
yeah,
what do words even mean anything anymore?
Yeah.
Like
oxymoron.
I saw someone
so
like
crazy.
some trans person like posted a photo of like burning an Israeli flag, and they were like pissing off Nazis, and it's like what are you talking about? Like, what do these words even mean anymore? Like, you're pissing off Nazis by burning an Israeli flag? What are you talking about? Like, it doesn't even
it's the same thing. It's the same thing, Ben. If you say, well, gays for Palestine, well, go there and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, trans people for Israel, go there and see what happens. Like I said, matter of fact, this brings up, we're going to do a bit of a kind of a subject change because we're nearing like, maybe like I want to keep this at like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. That's about it. Maybe max. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but we're going to do a slight subject change to the other issue. And then we'll come back and we'll kind of flip flop because there's so much overlap here. All right. Yeah. AI is pretty amazing.
Vibing out.
Yeah. So that's the thing, though, is like when we talk about this, it's like we can talk about the cultural narrative. All of this relates to culture. We have to be able to reference something and point to something. When we talk about the black culture, when we talk about the culture of the liberals, which is like adopting this oppressive symbol of black cultural narrative to where it's like, I'm the oppressor. No, you're not, blue-haired Molly that thinks that she wants to, lop her, mind you, I said she, and she wants to lop her penis off, which is crazy. Now I have to call this that thing that really isn't. In biology, it's like it's like almost like they gaslit me in biology. That's not really true. I have to reject this. So let's go back to this. And I want to point this out because the Hodge twins, funny guys. I know them.
They're hilarious.
I had a long conversation with them here when they were. Well, all right, because I've been in the fitness industry for a long time and I've turned pro in 2 different sports. You meet all different kinds of people. I'm going to show a clip real quick. And this is what I showed in the Israeli debate last night. Well, no, I didn't. Damn, I should have put this in here. Let's go back to it. I'm going to single this out real quick.
Get a couple.
I'll pause it right here. They will spit on you and they'll tell you that your God is a bastardized God, even though in the Talmud, boiling an excrement, all this other stuff. And it's like, that's a culture. But for some reason, we have shared values with them. And somehow we have this term called Judeo-Christian, which is really weird. Doesn't make sense to me. I think it's oxymoron, to be honest with you. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I mean, very blatant contradiction, and there's good material out there. A lot of them will sort of backtrack on this, on this notion that like the Talmud, that they'll say it's like a different Jesus or something. And it's funny because, all you have to do is like reference all the rabbis that have interpreted this to be, Jesus of Nazareth, who Christians follow, right? That's been the consensus of the rabbis for all of history, right? That was who it's talking about. It's talking about when it says those disgusting things with the Theotokos, like that's who it's talking about when it calls her horrible names that I won't even repeat. So yeah, I mean, it's just and it is a psyop. A lot of you, those of you who aren't familiar, like can look into the history of the term Judeo-Christian, but it's very new, really got popularized in the middle of the 20th century. And it's, it is to push, this sort of like Zionist sentiment. Originally, it actually had like innocent intention in the 19th century. It was started to be used as a term to sort of encourage Jews to convert to Christianity, saying, hey, we have these shared values, you should become Christian. And then it actually got weaponized as basically a political stunt, to be able to push, this sort of Zionist agenda. And I know we're going to get into this concept of like Zionism. One of the things I go over in my show is I use Emma Lazarus as a case study because Emma Lazarus is a crucial figure for particularly mass migration in the United States. She's responsible for the new Colossus poem that's on the Statue of Liberty that reads, bring me your poor, tired, huddled masses longing to breathe free. And it's this sort of migration, propaganda, right? Well, Emma Lazarus was Jewish. She was a Jewish immigrant. Well, she's actually 5th generation, but she didn't consider herself to be American. She considered herself to be Jewish, not American. And she was known as a Zionist before Zionism. And so at the very founding of these two concepts of, mass migration and Zionism, we see a lot of overlap, in the figure of Emma Lazarus. And so that's why, a lot of these people that sort of like to disconnect these two issues, it doesn't make a lot of sense because they're sort of like they're sort of inseparable at their very core. And I know we're going to unpack some of this. But yeah, I mean, Zionism is contrary to everything that we believe as Christians and we believe as Americans. And we can unpack that it's not just Zionism. It's actually a bigger problem. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
It's a massive problem. But Vic, I'm going to ask you a question because I know Ben knows this. I'm just going to assume, and I'd be right in my assumption, 90% chance of saying this, that I'm correct on this. Do you know what the Schofield Bible is, Vic?
Schofield Bible, nuh-uh.
It's new. So when Ben talks about this being a new thing, it's a Bible that supports modern Israel. Literally, this is what this is.
What?
This guy made had this interpretation and said, okay, hey, we're to support Israel no matter what. This is just reframing. And mind you, one guy's interpretation, right? So we can call this like one little tiny denomination that sprung forth. And now that's how we have this belief. Ben, am I off base here?
No, that's correct. Yeah, it was John Darby was behind the dispensationalist theology that has basically given birth to modern Christian Zionism. And yeah, it's basically, and then there's examples of like, evangelical like missionaries even be like funded by, Zionist organizations and things of that nature to sort of spread this gospel, if you will. And that's really the foundation for all these like paid trips to Israel is this sort of notion of Christian Zionism that literally started within the last couple of centuries, with that Schofield Bible is how it really, that was what resulted in, foreign policy changing in the United States. The fabric was prepared for it because people are so, unfortunately, low IQ, generally speaking, that, they hear Israel and they're like, wait a minute, I just read about that in my Bible. I'm pretty sure it's like the same thing, right? And it's like, I kind of joke sometimes that we should name America like Israel so that we can finally get some money to our own people. Maybe we can trick some of these Americans into thinking that, we're the chosen people or something like that. But no, but they successfully have done that, right? I genuinely believed that for a long time when I was a non-denominational. Jews are God's chosen people, and like Israel, the nation state founded in 1948, is literally the successor of like the biblical Israel, which is just utter nonsense, right? No Christian believed this for literally like 1800 years or more. So like, anyways, all of this is founded in the Schofield Bible. It's basically a study Bible that reinforces this dispensational propaganda.
Well, if we talk about this, because you brought up the trips to Israel. Mind you, just Vic, do you know what the Heritage and Study Program is? It's an educational program that's, propped up by Israel propaganda and money. Do you know what that is? That's not an educational program. They're funding trips to Israel so they can take our senators, bring them to Israel, and then parade them around and say, look how good we are, and then send them back and propagandize our nation even further. That's what's going on now. And I'm pretty sure Ben knows about this, which I further destroyed the guy in the debate last night, not to toot my own horn. But going on with this, this is crazy. So what I want to talk about now is like, and we can go back to like the whole extermination thing too. But like I said, there's overlap. It's not too far. It's a stone's throw away. There's an Israeli occupation that happened, and we saw the eventuality of this happening last night. It doesn't matter how loud your voice is. It doesn't matter how, we can march at polls and everybody else. There were people literally on the ground, microphones in faces saying, no, I'm loud and proud, Massey and all this other stuff. But meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, I could ask somebody, Ben, like, okay, Massey's opponent, what were his policies? What were his views? Can't name a single one, but Massey's, everybody knows what that is. Oh, so they propped some guy up last minute and they said, we just got to stop this guy because he's speaking out against Israeli interests and asking AIPAC to identify as a foreign agent, among other things. I'm like, how is this not an occupation and infiltration of our politics? And I'm like, do we even have like this democracy that we assume we probably have, which doesn't exist, by the way? That's crazy.
Yeah.
But how do we reconcile this, Ben? What do you see?
Yeah. So a couple of things to unpack here. So first of all, Massey is not even like super like anti-Israel. Like he literally just doesn't, basically just doesn't bend over for them. That's effectively it, like he and also he a lot of people will spread this propaganda against him, where they'll like say like, oh, he voted against funding for ICE or like funding for the border wall. And then if you actually unpack the bill, there's all this pork. So like that's a term that's used.
Oh, they
when it
slide
comes to
things
these
in.
bills. Yeah,
Hidden
exactly.
things they slide in.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So basically, you'll see all this propaganda, and the boomers totally bought into this in Kentucky. They'll spread this propaganda like, oh, he voted, he didn't vote to stop, genital mutilation for children or something like that. And then like you unpack the bill, and there's all this pork that's built into it. And so one of the things that Massey advocates for is like standalone bills. Like every single bill needs to be standalone. That way we can really isolate these issues and actually address them for what they are. And so anyway, so yeah, Massey was opposed by the Israel lobby. For those of you that are unfamiliar, it's primarily spearheaded by AIPAC. There are other Israel lobbies as well, but AIPAC is the primary one that is not registered as a foreign lobby. It's one of the only lobbies that doesn't have to register under FARA. And one of the things that people will often point out with AIPAC is they'll say, oh, well, there's like Muslim lobbies and there's leftist lobbies too. And it's like, okay, that's true. But here's where the distinction lies. AIPAC, 98% of candidates, and they openly advertise this, 98% of candidates that get backed by AIPAC get elected. 98%. And by the way, they're bipartisan. So that's about 62% Republican, 38% Democrat. The only lobbies that even come close to touching that number are the partisan ones, like gun rights lobbies. So like the gun rights lobbies, for example, the pro-2A lobbies, they have like a 94%. So even something as uncontroversial on the right as 2A, and that lobby is still only gets a 94% success rate in their endorsement of candidates. AIPAC somehow has a 98%. And they are bipartisan. They're 62-38 in favor of Republicans, but they're bipartisan. And 98% of their candidates get elected in office. So that's what makes AIPAC different. Is A, they're not registered under FARA, and B, they have such an insanely high rate of success for their elections. A couple of things that are also just like glaring examples of infiltration of our government and our people from Israeli influence is there's something called P5 veto with United Nations resolutions. So since the P5 veto existed in the 1940s, the United States has employed this veto power over the United Nations about 90 times. And basically what it is, it's 5 nations, it's 5 powerhouses in the world that have this ability to veto a UN resolution. And the United States is one of these nations. Well, out of the 90 times that the United States has employed this P5 veto, over half, in fact, about 51 of them have been something related to Israel. So the UN voted to basically, some sort of limit on Israel, some sort of sanction, or something to mitigate Israel and their influence and their power. And the U.S. has employed the veto power of P5 over half of the times that we've employed the veto in total, which is just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane the amount of times we've employed this veto power. There's also another thing called the QME. It's the qualitative military edge. And this is basically a one-way street policy that is built into American law that requires us to ensure that Israel maintains dominance in the region. So it is built into American law that we have to allow Israel to maintain dominance in their region there in the Middle East. There's nothing reciprocal. Israel doesn't have to do anything for us. But we are legally required to give them support if they start to lose their power in the Middle East. And then finally, I'll talk about the aid real quick. So a lot of people know that we send $3.8 billion a year to Israel. What a lot of people don't understand is that per capita, this is absolutely insane. So if you include all supplements that we send to Israel, they get about $720 per citizen. That's like per capita, that's the funding they receive. The closest second to this amount of aid is Jordan at only $150 per citizen in aid.
Crazy.
And then wait till you hear this. Number 3 is Egypt, $14 per citizen. So the amount of aid that we give to Israel per capita is substantially higher than the second most, and it's even more high than the third most. So it's an insanely disproportionate amount of aid that we give to this nation. And I'm not even talking about the fact that they have their own sections at the Pentagon, Mossad, and Mossad has like their own setup with like the CIA and things of that nature. That this just doesn't exist with other countries. There's all things that John Kiriakou has exposed. He's the guy who is Greek Orthodox, has been going viral for all these videos about the CIA, and he talks about Israel all the time. So anyways, there's a ton to unpack here, but that's a little bit of a brief summary of sort of some of the special privileges that Israel has over America.
It's insane. The handouts that they get are crazy, Vic. I brought this up in the debate last night. Are you familiar? I'm pretty sure Ben knows a lot about this, especially he's covering this. I had to do a shit ton of research on this. Are you familiar? Are both of you gentlemen familiar with the Lavon affair?
I'm not.
You're going to have to remind me.
So the Lavon affair, let me go ahead and bring this up because I want to get the date. And this is really insane. I think more people should know about this. I want this this podcast to be edifying to people so they can understand this. Israel conducted a false flag event called the Lavon affair. It was a failed Israel covert operation, which was a false flag event against the United States and the UK. They were dressed up as Egyptian nationals. And when they got caught, the guy fessed up to it. Israel actually took the blame for this and said, my bad. They conducted this in Egypt in the summer of 1954. This was supposed to influence political influence over UK and the US. But if you talk about the Gulf of Tonkin, really bad. And it's like, you could say, well, no, that's just an anecdote. Well, 9/11, according to you, was just an anecdote. And when I say according to you, I don't mean the gentleman here, was just an anecdote. And for some reason with 9/11, I can't have a water bottle, this can, or anything else after that event on a plane. I have to take my shoes off. It changed the way that we behave in America forever. 9/11 will go down in history as like never forget. The Lavon affair, because they were caught doing a false flag event against us, literally was stabbing us in the back. I didn't even bring up the USS Liberty yet.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah.
Which was crazy. And they asked for help. Hey, we need help. Our own people said, no, we're going to turn our jets around because we don't want to make Israel look bad. What? How do we unpack this, Ben? This is crazy. How do we trust a nation that will continually have patterns of stabbing us in the back and then have human rights violations of having dogs essaying their detainees and all this, according to the New York Post bombshell that came out? Yes, you've heard it right, folks. They're training their dogs to essay their people according to eyewitness testimonies. 2 guards came out and said this and revealed this, and now they have to go into protection mode because their country might take them out, speaking out against this. But the propaganda is like, we're good with the education program we're talking about, parading the politicians around, hey, see, nothing's bad here. And we'll silence them. Remember, we talked about the white silence and the propagandization the other way with the other community I talked about. The same thing happens. Is like, we'll allow them to go in, and then we'll allow Israel with Iraq to say they have weapons of mass destruction. They lied about that, by the way. That's where we got the intel. And then the intel for this one with the Iran, it's like, no, our DOD came in and said this, or we did the research. They don't have weapons of mass. Israel, they have weapons of mass destruction. We need to go to war for them. And it's like they've lied to us numerous amounts of times, yet we'll go to war for them, yet they've never sent soldiers on the boots of ground to fight for Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm like, okay, so we're going to die for you guys, but you'll never fight for us. The last point I'll make is Netanyahu made a statement. He said, for every Israel life that we have is worth 1,000 American lives. If we don't see this as like an occupation of somebody that's against her interest, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and what I think an important context here too is a lot of people don't understand the political climate in Israel itself. So Netanyahu represents what really is like the far right party in Israel, and there was actually a falling out that he had with. There's also a centrist party that he actually had a falling out with, and that actually pushed him further right. And so, so Israel already inherently is a problem, but they have this extremely far right. And what I mean by far right, I don't actually mean like what we understand far right to be. I just mean like sort of like expansionist mindset. So like Netanyahu and his finance minister have explicitly expressed support for what's called the Greater Israel Agenda, which if you look it up, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. But then you can look up quotes. Netanyahu and his finance minister have explicitly said that they are in favor of the Greater Israel Agenda. They give like full lectures. There's photos of the finance minister giving a lecture about this to our government officials about the Greater Israel Agenda, saying he wants to annex Jordan and things of this nature. So it's definitely not a conspiracy. Everyone can go read about it. You can go read the very quotes from the horse's mouth. So people need to understand that there is disagreement within Israel. Now they have elected, he's the longest sitting prime minister in Israeli history. So they keep electing the guy. So it's like they aren't exactly free from blame. But there are riots that oppose Netanyahu. They don't like Netanyahu. There's a lot of people who don't like Netanyahu there. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack. I mean, you mentioned the USS Liberty. And yeah, I did remember this Lavon affair. I just forgot about it, specifics of it. But yeah, thank you for reminding me of this. Because that is an insane case study. Operation Northwoods is another crazy one that's kind of similar with the CIA. But the USS Liberty was very clearly intention was to be a false flag. The Israelis were clearly trying to drag the U.S. Into the 6-day war with Egypt, and it's very obvious that the CIA was in on this, which is why, again, like you mentioned, the rescue jets were told to turn around. They didn't want anyone to survive. They had shot lifeboats. They literally were machine gunning lifeboats. They didn't want anyone to survive to be able to give testimony to the events of that day. Lieutenant Colonel Kislev, who was the head air traffic controller for the Israelis, openly came out after the event and said, when he was briefed on the marker for the ship, GTR-5, he explicitly said, at that point in time, this is a verbatim quote, at that point in time, I was sure it was an American ship. And the attack carried on for another 75 minutes. And it was a combined arms attack. It was torpedoes and attacks from jets. There are transcripts from Israeli helicopters explicitly identifying it as American. This is all available in the NSA records. So it's like very glaringly obvious that this was a false flag that they were trying to stage, and it failed. It failed, and people survived, and they were ostracized. They were given gag orders. They were ostracized in their career if they tried to talk about it. And so the whole thing was swept under the rug. John McCain headed the investigation and erroneously determined that it was mistaken identity, even though in 2004, the head of that investigation came out and in 2004 and wrote an entire affidavit saying that they were directed by the CIA and the president to deem it a mistaken identity, even though it wasn't. He said, quote, against strong evidence to the contrary is what he said. And then he called it a politicized sham. So this is all available. You can look up, I think the guy's name is Captain Boston. You can look up his 2004 affidavit where he explains all of this. He's literally like the head guy on the investigation. So it's like very glaringly obvious false flag that they failed. But the whole thing was swept under the rug. And, you know, I think it was 34 Americans that died and then 171 injured. So. Yeah.
Oh, don't forget the fact that they had to sign NDAs and couldn't talk about this, but on their deathbed, maybe they talked about this. And that's the only way we found out about this. But Ben, I want to get your take on something. I'm going to present to the stage real quick. And of course, maybe you haven't seen this, maybe you have, but I want to get your first reaction from this. And also you too, Vic, and we'll call this segment, What's Wrong with This Picture? Here we go. Take your time.
Oh, you want him to answer or what?
By the way, let me give some context. This is Israeli's #1 news publication. Go ahead. What's wrong with this?
Well, what's wrong with it is if I tweeted this, it would be anti-Semitic. That's what's wrong with it.
Oh, damn. But hold on. I thought Kentucky was in America. What's like? You see how that's
it's in Greater Israel.
Right. How does this not look
Kentucky, Israel?
But how does this not look like Kentucky owns Israel by their standards? For if you read this and you were an Israeli sovereign citizen and you read this, how do you not think that we own Kentucky or Kentucky's a part of Israel? The optics is a nightmare on this alone. This is crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like, so Ben's right. I did do a little bit of research on you, Ben, talking about why I dislike Israel. I saw that. I love that series, by the way. I was like, oh, we're going to talk about that anyways. And then lo and behold, I happen to have a debate on the whole topic.
Yeah, people should go. So the part 2 is over the USS Liberty. I go over all the info for that one. And then part 1, and people should look up. It's on my Instagram. It's actually pinned. And I go over Israel was literally, this is objectively true. Israel was founded by 3 terrorist organizations. They're called the Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi. And they were, yeah. Okay, sure, we could do that. So the Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi were basically 3 paramilitary organizations in the 1940s in Palestine. Which is what it was called at the time, right? And a lot of that land is still Palestine. But anyways, so they were basically, they would conduct terror attacks against Palestinians. So during this time in the United States, the Jewish mob, a lot of people don't know this, but the mob and the mafia are not the same thing. So the mafia was the Italians, the mob was the Jews. And during Prohibition, they actually merged. So they made an agreement. And the director of the FBI was actually involved in this because they had blackmail on him, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that the mob and the mafia merged during Prohibition. And so come the 1940s, the U.S. actually started to sort of weaponize the mob and mafia by granting them control over our ports. So they already had a lot of control over our ports just because the U.S. didn't have the infrastructure to be able to actually fight these guys. And so we just met with their leaders and we basically handed them the keys to our ports. And so the Jewish mob, particularly Meyer Lansky, actually was able to smuggle weapons and money to these paramilitary organizations in Palestine. And so anyways, this mob is funneling these weapons over there. And one of the most famous acts of terror was the bombing of the King David Hotel, which I believe happened in 1946. Yeah, 1946. And the King David Hotel was was sort of the headquarters of the Brits at that time, because technically it was under British control at that point in history. And so what happened was the Irgun bombed the King David Hotel. They killed 91 people. The vast majority of which were actually Jews and Arabs. They weren't even Brits. I think when they bombed it, it was less than half were actually Brits, and then only a small portion of those people were military, members of the British military. So what you'll often hear as a response is, "Oh, this wasn't an act of terror because it was a military, target." It's like, well, why were there Arabs and Jews there then? Like, why was that the majority of the people who died? So here's where it gets crazy. The head of the Irgun, literally the guy who planned the entire operation, the terror attack, he becomes prime minister. He ends up being a prime minister. Ben Gurion was also a prime minister, it was also a head of the, I think, Haganah. I can't remember if he was the head of the Haganah or the Lehi. But Ben Gurion was the first prime minister, but Prime Minister Begin, who is the head of the Irgun, he literally goes on to become prime minister. And these 3 organizations, the 3 terrorist organizations, get absorbed into the Israeli Defense Forces. So they took these 3 groups that were literally terrorist organizations, they gleaned their leadership and plugged them into political roles, and then they took all of their military training and they literally made a military out of it, and that's now the IDF. So objectively, Israel was founded as a terrorist state. It's actually insane.
It's no wonder why we have such an infiltration that's happening right now. And we have to think about this. People can say, well, at no time did and this is what the guy told me last night. He was like, we never fought for Israel. And I'm like, if Israel never asked us to fight Iran, would we ever fight Iran? And he ran from this as hard as he could. I was like, and I got him to say no, which I'm like, this guy ran into walls all night long. I'm a halfway decent debater, a D-level debater. But that's the thing, though, is our proponents would have us believe that we should have Zionism. right? That should be the flavor of the day. We should always lean towards this. And, according to the Schofield Bible, we should accept them as, for some reason they have magic Jew blood. Like, this is a thing that has been uttered. And I'm like, for some reason we've been propagandized as a nation. I think the biggest proponents and enemies that I fight are Christian Zionists more than anything else on this issue, because they're emboldened in this belief structure and Protestantism and everything else, this mumbo jumbo they believe in, that they're supposed to prop up these Israelis before Christians. And I'm like, hold on, they don't even believe in the same God and all that. It's just crazy. Yet, Ben, if you go over there and you wear this, because I have an Orthodox cross on my neck, over there, see if you make it down the street without getting spit on or, mocked or anything else. It's like, well, we don't even share the same values. It's insane, but somehow we're supposed to treat them as allies. We're not even treated like that if we go boots on the ground over there as a civilian. It's insane.
Yeah, and by the way, I did double check. It was Ben Gurion, who is the first prime minister. He was the head of the Haganah, which was one of these. And then another interesting point that I like to bring up too. It's actually funny. The Lehi actually were in negotiations with the German National Socialists. So like there's all this crazy stuff going on in the 1940s, but that was one of them. Was like one of these terrorist organizations that gets absorbed into the IDF and into the Israeli leadership was really like in negotiations with the Nazis. And I think there's some overlap there. I can't remember if the Havara Agreement predates those negotiations or not, but the Havara Agreement was basically Hitler gave Jews in Germany an opportunity to go live in Palestine. He basically said, hey, if you want, we will basically, you give us this amount of money and we will transfer it to the local currency, and we will we will help you transport you to Palestine. And that's called the Havara Agreement. So people can look into that. So yeah, anyways, it's interesting, all the different dynamics happening in the 1930s and 40s and how a lot of it involves the nation state of Israel.
So Ben, I want to ask you a question right now. This isn't to question your knowledge about law or anything like this, because a lot of people don't really understand this. When I bring up the dogs essaying people, this isn't for like dramatic effect or I want to seem polarizing or anything like that. No, these are, you're talking about acts, human rights violations and things like this. The reason why I say this is important is because, and two things real quick, which debunk anybody else that says that we should keep funding Israel. Netanyahu has came out and said, we would like to be at net zero aid from the U.S. I don't believe this, by the way. When I hear this,
they cut off his statement, right? So because he said I want us to transition to a partnership. So basically,
absorbed.
So he said exactly.
Yeah.
So he said I want to our aid to be zero, and I want it to be replaced with a partnership. So it was not people. It was taken out of context, and 60 Minutes actually trimmed that part. It's not in the main broadcast.
And that makes sense. I naturally don't trust them because of the Lavon Act, because of the USS Liberty. Matter of fact, there's more that we can unpack. But I do want to bring this up. Ben, are you familiar with what the Leahy Act is?
The Leahy Act? No,
yeah,
I'm
the
not
Leahy
Act. No.
Brilliant. Okay, because I'm about to educate you on something. Let me speak in Ebonics so that way I don't get ostracized even further from Black community. Moving forward with this, the Leahy Act. Remember when I brought up the dogs essaying people and them chopping children's heads off and doing all this? Well, the proponents would be like, well, Palestine's doing the same thing. Good. I can be consistent and say don't fund any of them. That's fine. Let the sand people fight amongst themselves. But here's why the Leahy Act is important. The Leahy Act, and I'm going to describe this real quick. I'm reading this off of Google. The Leahy Act or Leahy Amendments are U.S. human rights statutes that prohibit the Department of State and Defense from providing military assistance or financial aid or training to foreign security forces units that commit gross human violations of human rights with impunity. Makes sense, right? Why are we giving them foreign aid? That's why it's extremely important. Here's the crazy part about this. When we try to bring up the Leahy Act, there were 72 people in Congress that voted against this and only 11 that said they wanted this. And here's the reason why I suspect this. This could be speculative on my part. I think the reason why they voted against this is because they don't want to see what could be uncovered if they do this. Some investigative analysis. First of all, the U.S. press isn't even allowed to go there and even ask questions. They curate their information and send us back with propaganda. First of all, we're silenced. We're not allowed to know what goes on. And we're being lied to about weapons mass destruction. Nobody trusts them. But the fact that we voted against this to say, okay, in order for us to keep funding them, we enact the Leahy Act to discover if there's human atrocities that are happening, human rights violations. That would stop the funding, right? That's first things first. But it shows the further infiltration of the Israeli government through financial propagandization, through AIPAC and other organizations, how deep in bed with the state they are. When 72 people in Congress say, no, we don't want to find out if they're committing human rights violations to stop them from being funded. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, they the IDF actually owned up, some IDF soldiers owned up to literally shooting. So a lot of people don't know like sort of the dynamics right now. There was a blockade. In fact, the Israeli finance minister said that if the world allowed them to, they would starve all 2 million Gazans. And he said this openly, but they set up a blockade that basically didn't even allow like food in, because they said that it could be used for like munitions and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Well, as a result, you had local Palestinians trying to get food from like food banks, and they would like try to sneak in to get food, and the IDF opened fire on them when trying to do this. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just the human rights violations are obviously disgusting. I mean, it's at this point, it's openly an apartheid state. So because they would claim that Gaza and the West Bank are part of Israeli territory, but the people that live there are not citizens. So that is by definition an apartheid state. They're actually better off. So I think it's it's the vast majority of the countries in the UN. I think it's like 157 of them actually recognize a Palestinian state. And that's actually better for Israeli law, because that would mean that it's not an apartheid state, because technically it's they're their own state. So it seems like they really have two options as far as basic, human rights and international law. They either need to annex the West Bank and Gaza and grant them citizenship, which they don't want to do, because then they would become only 50% of the population, Jews would, or B, they need to grant them their own state. Like those are your two options. You can't, like, occupation is not the solution. It is, a violation of their human rights. And so you have to take your boot off their neck, and you either need to grant them a state, or you need to annex the territory and grant them citizenship. Like those are your two options. And so, there's a lot to unpack here, but the human rights, the disregard for human rights. Netanyahu openly said recently, it's funny because a lot of these Zio apologists, if you will say that, like, oh, he doesn't want to ethnically cleanse them or anything like that. But Netanyahu openly came out. In May, he openly came out and said, early May, he said, I want to ensure that the Gazans have no homes to return to. That was what he said. So that's ethnic cleansing. You can't do that, dude. You can't do that. So I mean, it's pretty blatant, which is why this is real. I'll just land this plane real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The perspective, the perception of Israel, basically everywhere else in the world, acknowledges these things. It's like just here. Like this is the only place in the world really where like there's like a stigma around like anti-Israeli content. And like this is just not how it is. Even Western Europe is like starting to recognize like Palestine as a state, saying that Netanyahu is a war criminal, things of that nature. So the sentiment, and actually in the book, The Israel Lobby, I don't know where it went. I had it on I think in my nightstand. It's written by kind of a normie, and he actually goes over this, how like the rest of the world's perception of Israel is very different than the American one. So
it's funny because it's a form of sophistry. Like, let me know if I'm off base here, Ben, but it's a form of sophistry when you say, I don't want to let them have any homes to return to, when really you can somehow scapegoat and slide out of this, because that's pure sophistry. When you say, well, it's ethnic cleansing. Well, no, that's not what I meant by saying that. It's funny the way that they choose and curate their language when they say this, no homes left. could be used for so many things. It's such a generalized statement. Well, no, I mean, relocate, right? You see how we can do this? Pure sophistry at the heart of things. And when we say this, it's like, well, we know what they mean. We just can't say this. And when we say we don't like Israel's policy, here's the other word game that they're using. If I say I don't like Israel's policies and I don't like their infiltration, the occupation, I'm automatically anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Semitic for saying, no, that doesn't mean that. So now what they're doing is everything is labeled anti-Semitic for saying, I just don't like the infiltration, the occupation in the United States where Massey can run. And I'm not saying I chose a side or whatever, but Massey could say anything just to hint at this. They did this to two black senators who were against the Israeli occupation and them to identify themselves as foreign actors, as AIPAC and everybody else. It's like, dude, these are just common sense things, but they're automatically labeled anti-Semitic for just that. This doesn't make any sense because now it's the same thing as your ex, Ben. Like, let's say if you're in a relationship, you're just an a-hole, but you're called a narcissist. Those are two different things. But mind you, they're warping language to where now this language is, and this goes to the white extermination propagandization, to where language doesn't mean anything. It means whatever we want because these definitions aren't absolute. Meanwhile, I can label you a schnazi and all you are is just telling the truth, and it feels mean and it hurts. So that's what you are. They're doing this to everything else. Israeli propagandization is doing the same thing when they're saying, we just don't want you to have any homes to return to. Pure sophistry. Am I off base?
Well, they're starting to be less they're starting to be less sophist with it because they're just coming out and saying it. For a while that was sophistry, but like when Netanyahu came out and said that, like the Zio apologists just kind of like threw their hands up. Like, what am I supposed to say about this? Like this is clearly ethnic cleansing. Like,
brazen now. More brazen.
Yeah. So, because if it's funny, because if you listen to how they would frame it, I've listened to all the Surrounded episodes. I've listened to, there's a guy named Nick Matua, I think is how you say his name, and he's a big like Israel shill. And it's funny if you watch his rhetoric, because before Netanyahu had said that, he was like, yeah, Netanyahu's been very careful not to imply any sort of ethnic cleansing in the land and to ensure that the Palestinians still maintain a home, and then he literally came out and explicitly said, we don't want them to have a home to return to. So it was like, Oof. But yeah,
the contradictions are stifling here, by the way. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And they have no leg to stand on. I mean, they think that they have like a divinely granted right to have an ethno state, which is why they don't want to annex these territories. They want Jews to be able to live there. They don't want the Arabs and the Palestinians to be able to live there. They want to annex it and be able to have Jews live there, because the problem, if they annex it and they grant them citizenship, like I was explaining, they would actually become a minority in Israel. So right now, Jews make up about 75% of Israel. And you could still maybe call that an ethno state, although I would say 85% is what makes an ethno state, but that's like ambiguous. But if they annex them, because the population in West Bank is about 4 million, and then Gaza, of course, is 2 million, and the vast majority of those are Arab. So they wouldn't be able to consider, it wouldn't be an ethno state anymore. It would be, it would be actually over half Arab. So, and they don't want that. So that's why they won't do it.
So I have a question, Ben, real quick, if I can ask before Vic chimes in. How do I frame this? Because I had like a list of questions. Remember, Vic, that I never once went to that, because this has been such an engaging podcast. Usually we have guests that are like, we have to kind of goad into talking a little bit. Ben, you're more of like, the person that's like, it's less work for me because you have a lot of information. You're kind of an encyclopedia now of sorts. Yeah. But here's the thing, though. Do you think that we have an Israeli occupation in America that would allow this free range voting that we assume that we have?
Do I think that?
Do you think that there's an Israeli occupation that's currently happening? Of course, Captain, obviously, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think I went over that with the AIPAC stuff and sort of the unique privileges that they have and just their success rate. I mean, and it's interesting if you look at like. For example, you'll have Jewish writers actually bragging that like elections are like competitions for who can, defend Israel more, and it's funny how like you'll have these bills that will just like, pass with unanimity in the House or the Senate. And it's like, Congress can't agree on anything, but they agree on Israel. And it's like, why is that? Like, they agree on two things. They agree on two things: pro-America and pro-Israel. Like, those are basically like the only two things that like American politicians can agree on, whether, you know, either side of the aisle. And it's actually sad because the Democrats are figuring this out before us, because the Republican Party is sort of becoming like, every year it shifts more and more Zio, and the Democrats shifts left and left, like less and less Zio. And it's like, it's actually really unfortunate that like they're figuring this out before we are. Cause it's like, how did the party that literally believes in taxpayer funded genital mutilation for children figure out that we're under foreign influence, you know, before we did? Like, the cold-blooded Americans who love our country weren't able to identify this. And it's actually crazy because like Tucker talks about this, about how like he would go to like Republican events for not centuries, decades. And he would say like, and he would notice like people would talk about Israel, but he like never thought twice about it. Like everybody is talking about how much they love Israel. And it's like, why? Like, no one ever even thought to question it. Like, no one ever even thought like, this is odd. We're at an American political event and we're talking about a foreign country, and we're bringing in people who like, we're bringing in, you know, figures from that nation. We're bringing Netanyahu. 6 times Netanyahu has been to the White House under this presidency. No one has ever come close to that. The only one that came close to it was Winston Churchill during World War II. Like, that's the only time any world leader has ever come close to visiting the White House that amount of times. So it's just very evident, very obvious when he's pulling his chair out for Netanyahu and things of that nature. Because here's the thing, like, Trump is a diva. Like, that's what doesn't make any sense about any of this, is like, Trump is a diva. No one tells Trump what to do. But like,
yes, man.
For some reason, right, Israel is like, it has this like unique place in his heart. Like, I mean, Mark Levin, Tucker talks about how like Mark Levin walked over to Trump, like, and literally like put him in like an arm lock. Like, you put the president of the United States in an arm lock like he's a little child. Like, Trump would never stand for something like that from anybody. He's never stood for anything like that in his entire life. So it just begs the question of like, why does he put up with it? Why does he put up with it? And to be honest with you, I don't quite understand. I don't quite understand why. You know, it's like the State Department openly admitted. So the State Department released a document like a month ago, and openly said that and Marco Rubio also said this explicitly and then backtracked later on. But the State Department released a statement saying that the reason why we got involved in Iran was over Israel. They literally admitted this openly in a State Department document. And then Trump has the audacity to say that when he was asked about America's Americans' financial situation, he said, "I don't care about that." He verbatim said, "I do not care about that. I care about Iran not getting a nuclear weapon," even though countries that also hate America, like Pakistan, have nuclear weapons, and it's been fine. So it's like the fact that you would dare say you don't care about America's financial problems. All you care about is a foreign nation. By the way, a foreign conflict that the State Department admitted is over Israel. It's like, that's just the quiet part out loud. You're just saying the quiet part out loud at that point.
Yeah. And the funny thing about this is like, if you go to Israel, Vic, like, I can say this out loud because I'm not quiet about it. No pun intended. If you go to Israel, they have free healthcare, free medical, free school, everything else. Meanwhile, we got potholes. Our educational system is in shambles. Our healthcare system is in shambles. Everything else is, we're suffering here. Gas is going up. But meanwhile, Israel is sitting pretty. So when Ben brings up the per capita thing, like $700 some odd dollars, I'm not going to try to be exact here, ballpark figure here, but it's like, to me, there's a lopsided exchange that's happening here. And I'm just going to call it what it is. Israel is a parasite. We are its host. And when people talk about this, it's like people can say, well, that's going to be just unoccupied by anybody else and the Hormuz and everything else. I'm like, just let the sand people fight. That's just my opinion on this. And if you let them fight, a very interesting thing will happen. I think that this will happen. And I've stated this before in this conversation. I think Israel will withdraw and say, you know what? Damn, we don't have the armament to fight this. We can't do this on our own. Why are we even in this? Let's stop fighting, because it's really a religious war. This is really what it boils down to. And to jump from that tangent to the tangent that I'm going to jump onto, this religious war is being fought in the United States as orthodoxy is taking a surge, right? Another entity is also taking a surge, which is pointing towards Antichrist. It's literally Israel. Hey, people are going to hate me for saying this. Maybe my channel will get nuked for saying this, but they're literally promoting and propping up the Antichrist. So, and when we're fighting to try to bring orthodoxy into prominence, because we have new catechumens booming, right? We're struggling to try to find positions for priests to come in. That's literally where we're at. Ben will probably agree with me on this. But also another thing is setting prominence, where Israel, like, remember what I said, Kentucky is the new part of Israel. Like, that's the way it reads in the publication. We're having this war. So we have an ideological war. That's why we need people like Ben, people like me who are debating in the trenches, and even people like you, Vic. And when people say debate doesn't change anything, trust me, the term orthobros is being thrown for one specific reason. It's because we have people that are overzealous and want to jump in and debate. The same way that Ben talked about is like these people that are like, oh, there's an anti-white propaganda thing. I need to fight this. So there's an overcorrection and they get called snazis and all this. And Ben, what he's doing is toning it down a little bit. I'm trying to kind of lead a certain way to say, yes, we can acknowledge this, but I don't want you to do an overcorrection where we're doing this with our arm. What I want you to do is acknowledge this and combat this. We need competent people to be in the trenches, because, Ben, I'm going to be honest with you, these trenches are empty. There's nobody out there fighting with us. We need more people behind you who are competent and who have permission from the church to do this. I don't have permission. That's why I don't debate theology. I'll destroy them and everything else. But that's the thing, though. That's neither here nor there. We need fighters, because there's an ideological war at hand, a religious war that's being fought right now that nobody's talking about. And all of this leans also towards, part and parcel towards, this white extermination propaganda as well, too. It's built in. It's baked into the pie. That's where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly, an Orthodox perspective is definitely needed. For those of you who are wondering, so the document I was referencing, April 21st, released by the State Department, literally says the United States is engaged in this conflict, referring to Iran, at the request of and in the collective self-defense of its Israeli ally. So openly admitting, the State Department openly admitted that the reason why we're at war with Iran is over Israel. Anyways, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to focus on politics. I love debating theology too, but I think that there's a need for Orthodox voices in politics. I think there's a ton of debaters in theology, and so that's why I'm interested particularly on the immigration issue and the Israel issue. Those are sort of the two main fights for me that I'm kind of trying to get into. So yeah.
So I'm with the same with you. In the same regard, I'm not familiar with the debating politics, but I dipped my toe in last night and absolutely eviscerated my opponent. But because of that, I now have this fervor, right? This new fervor. Well, these catechumens that get into, they're inspired by the Andrew Wilsons, by me, by you, other people. They get into this, and I do want to offer a word of caution. Study church history. Take your time. Don't get overzealous and get in here, because what's going to happen are two things. You're going to burn out, and then it's going to drive you further away from the faith. I've seen this happen. People get in there, they get overzealous, and then all of a sudden, teetering off. It's like, that was cool. That was my orthodoxy phase. Avoid that. We need to go away from this. Take your time. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it's ramping up. But I don't need you ramping up to where you're going to be burnt out. The second thing, too, is we want to prevent this overcorrection that Ben talked about here. It's like, yeah, I hate it. Now I hate you. We need to prevent this. Like, we're trying to fight an ideology, not a specific person. And I get that there's two distinct things that we can talk about here. But anyways, I'll throw it back to you, Ben. These are things that we need to be cautionary of. As far as me doing debates, I'm trying to get better, because I realize that the enemy is this ideology. And I need to think about the results and the outcomes of what I'm doing in this debate. Are people being edified by this? Are they learning from something in this? Because I don't do debates. Like, if I debated Ben, I'm not trying to change his mind. I'm going to be honest with you, Ben. I'm not trying to change your mind. But there are people at home that are watching the debate between you and me, whether or not maybe an apple cake could be a thing, which I've never heard of in my life. And you could say, well, it's disgusting. I don't think that should be a thing. We're debating something very simple like that, right? Well, there's a fence sitter at home that hasn't picked a side. I'm doing this to change that person's mind.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's always about the audience. Very rarely are you going to change the mind of the person that you're actually debating. So that's what I've always told people. It's like, you have to understand that. And also, like, I usually generally like match the energy of who I'm debating. So like, if they're combative, I'll be combative. If they're chill, I'll be chill. Like, you know, I don't have any interest in picking a fight. You know, if somebody, you know, if I'm going to defend the church, I just went on David Wood's show with my buddy Nick, and we were addressing. It was actually hilarious because it was like.
Wait, I got to hear about this. Go ahead. Let's dive into this. Go ahead.
Yeah. By the way, I do got to run here soon, so maybe like just a couple more minutes here. But So basically, everyone saw the whole thing with David Wood. He's been attacking the Orthodox Church, and so my buddy and I. So Andrew Wilson went on and just absolutely like ripped into him, like just absolutely cooked him. And then so he kind of like reset himself, and he started to dig up all this stuff about like Jay and try to like expose Jay and things of that nature. And then and then after that happened, Nick and I went on to basically like refute. So he was like live reacting to a needgod.net video. And basically, like, Nick and I were just like refuting that line by line with him. And he was actually very genuine. Like, he was very, like, his whole persona from like when he was on with Andrew to when he was on with us was like totally different. And like I think there's a place, there's a time and place for both. But like, he was like super genuine. He was like asking us genuine questions, things of that nature. So it actually was like a very edifying conversation. So yeah, I do think, I mean, I get DMs pretty much every day from guys who are inquiring and, you know, are impacted by my work. And so, you know, I definitely think it's undeniable that what we're doing is making impact for sure.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. We did have a question from the audience that I'll allow real quick. Long Haul Nate sent in a super chat, and he wanted to ask, Ben, does the term Greek pride sound like Skittles coded to you? Sound Skittles coded to you? That's what he wanted to ask.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I don't really like, so pride. I'm open to ideas here because I'm not sure what word would be a good replacement for pride, because I don't like the term pride. I mean, it's inherently sinful, right? Like pride, I think it's, I think you could maybe argue that there's an unsinful form of pride, but I don't know that there's a biblical basis for that. So it's like, okay, what do we call, you know, looking at your heritage positively? Like, what word would we use that's like not sinful? So I don't know. I'm open to ideas. I don't like the term pride in general, like when it comes to these contexts. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So we're going to wrap up here. I know this was kind of a crazy, hectic podcast, but these are important issues that we need to discuss. And absent discussing this, all you have is allowance. And I want to prevent that. I think we need soldiers in the fights. If you think about it, it's like looking at the murals of in the church and things like this. We see swords and shields. Go to Protestant church. No, turn the other cheek, die, all this other stuff. We're going to just allow infiltration to where now we have rainbow flags in our church. The infiltration has started long ago, right? Yeah. We want to prevent this. And that's what catechesis is, right? The infiltration, we're vetting. I think that that's important. I do think also we need to be able to, what is it? Safeguarding. I forgot the word is called when you protect things from coming in. There's another word for this. When you have to gatekeep. Yeah, gatekeeping. I think that Christianity should be kept. I think at all costs. If you're not gatekeeping, you have allowance, and next thing you know, it warps your culture to where we don't have what the church looks like anymore. That's what's happening to America right now at the moment. And yeah, this has been a very, very fun podcast. I enjoyed myself by discussing this. Anyways, I'll allow you to say, take as long as you need, where people can find you, any closing words that you have on the subject, and the floor is yours, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I host the show American Orthodoxy over on my YouTube, Real Ben Michael, and I'm live every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 2:00 Eastern. And that's the best place to find me. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at the same handle, Real Ben Michael. And basically my entire, the whole purpose of my show is to bring young men who are far right into the fold. So like, one of the things that I really desire for them is to, help them kind of pump the brakes on, you know, sort of some of these race valid concerns they have about race and immigration and Israel and things of that nature, and help them bring them into the fold and submit themselves to what the church has to say about it. And so I'm constantly citing Orthodox saints and church authorities to make sure that we're ensuring we're grounded in what the saints say. And so, yeah, that's sort of the work I do. And you can find me over at that show. And I'm going to be starting to get into some political debates very soon. So I'm probably going to be debating Harry Sisson actually on immigration.
Nice.
Wow.
That's going to be, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to be looking for, I was actually going to ask you because I review debates on my channel.
Yeah.
I was actually, if you're going to be getting back into debates, that's actually great news. I'm going to be looking forward to that debate.
Yeah.
Pretty sure you're going to destroy Harry Sisson, and it's going to be entertaining. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yes.
The cope is going to be magnificent. By the way, I'm also making an announcement too, because I thoroughly eviscerated my opponent last night. I too am going to be entering the political arena debates. I also thought about running as well too. I just hate the part that, you know, you can't just jump in. People have to see your face at events and anyways, that's a whole different conversation. I want to spend a whole nother hour droning on about that. But people can find you at Benjamin Michael on YouTube, right?
Real Ben Michael. Here, I'll type it in the chat. And I can just send you the link so you can put them in the description afterwards here. But
yeah, we'll do that too. We'll put your link in the description as well, where people can find you. Another question that I have real quick before we leave: you were going by the moniker of Orthodox Luigi, and now Real Ben Michael. What happened with that?
Yeah, so
my
online persona has been Luigi for forever, and this started in 2020 time frame when I blew up on TikTok, because my boss at the time, so my last name is actually French, and it's like really hard to pronounce, and so he took one look at it. He was like, "I'm just going to call you Luigi instead," and so ever since then, I just went by Luigi online. But I wanted to, the reason why I switched it up is because I want my name to match what it will one day be on a ballot. So, and then even though I don't use my real last name, Michael is my real middle name. So people will be able to recognize it on a ballot. They'll recognize my brand. So that was sort of the goal. Because if I do Luigi, it's like, no, who's gonna know who this Ben Langlois guy is? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I had to do it that way. And actually, there's a lot of states who allow you can actually put whatever name you want as long as it's your real name. So I can put just my first and middle name on a ballot, for example. But anyways, that was the main reason. And then the other thing too is just St. Michael the Archangel. I'm very drawn to. He was the patron saint of the Iron Guard. And he is, it's literally my middle name. So I've always been kind of drawn to him as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that, my saint is St. Moses the Black, and we would be both known as coons today because we're very anti-Black culture. He turned his back on Black culture, which was crime and all these other things. It's like he would be known as a coon, and very conservative actually by today's standards.
Does my hair look red? Someone said I'm a ginger.
Yeah, somebody said.
Yeah, even in my chat,
my
chat too. Yeah, my chat too. People are saying that you're a ginger too.
Oh my god,
you do look like a ginger from my perspective too.
Oh boy.
Your hair does look red too. Yeah.
Well, it's not. It's blonde. I swear it's blonde.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, you know that gingers are somehow known as black, so maybe you have the N-word pass. Who knows? We'll find out, to be continued in the future. So to be continued on that. So.
Yes. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. God bless.
Christ is God. All right.
Christ is God.
Yeah, that was one hellacious podcast to go through. I was on pins and needles because I was like, oh, my channel, I don't want to get it nuked, but this must be talked about. That's the whole time I was talking.
Yeah, I mean, Marte kept telling me this is going to be really controversial, and I could see why, because it got pretty controversial. I mean, already talking about the white erasure stuff and the white problem here in America, that's already controversial enough. But then to get over to the Israel stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna draw a lot of division, you know. But I learned a lot because I've always said I've been very ignorant when it comes to Israel stuff. I have no opinion on it one way or the other. I'm not a Zionist, and I'm not I don't hate Israel or anything like that. But to hear you and Luigi going back and forth on it, I actually learned a lot. So I actually kind of want to look more into stuff. So that was very informative, I got to say.
Vic, I don't know if you're going to, so if you're not that informed, I don't know if you're going to cover my debate last night, but my opponent got thoroughly destroyed and eviscerated. That was a pretty good debate.
Even though I'm not like an expert on the subject, I do want to watch it because I saw you shared the poll on who won, and it was usually when you put up your polls, they're usually like you win by like a land. Yeah, usually win by a landslide. But this one was, the margin was much smaller. And I was like, oh wow, I actually kind of want to see this now. You know, it's
48 to 52%. And here's the thing though, is like the things that I destroyed him on were very obvious, but what he did was very in my hat's off to AVG Tyler. He's the other AVG. The way that he kind of like smooths or smuggles himself out of these positions that he has is like, oh, that's kind of like some borderline high tier debater stuff that you're doing right there. But I'm like, no, I'm going to hold you to it. And I'm going to re-ask the question that you don't answer. And that's how you get people is you ask the question again. You keep asking this because they'll wiggle out of this. He does this a lot in the debate. But what I did was I took this stance to the very non-politically aware person in this debate, and I turned it into bite-sized portions and explained how grotesque these acts were, like talking about the SA with the dogs on people and how we were bought and you can pick your pony that you want for these political races, and how this was like I breadcrumb people to the eventuality of how Israel isn't really an ally, how they're kind of like parasitic and we're the host, and use that language to where in this debate, even the lay person and political awareness could be like, oh, that makes sense the way that Marte broke this down. So the way that I approached this political debate was like, damn, I don't want to use all these political terms. I want to break this down to where the Vics of the world, not disparaging you, but anybody else watching this debate can be like, damn, Marte's making a lot of sense and I can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, I do plan on reviewing it. I think it should be really interesting. It does kind of sound like Israel's like the leech or like the moocher friend that's just like, oh man, come on, can you give me money? Can you give me money? And then if you say no, then it's like the guilt trip you. It's like, well, okay, it'd be a shame if the Muslims destroyed us. I know, right? Yeah, I'm anti-Semitic now. Yeah,
there's one nation.
Know, right?
It's like for some reason their nation has got a blank check to unconditionally do whatever the hell they want to. That's the way it looks right now. I don't see how that's any different. And if anybody in the chat disagrees with me, how am I wrong with this? And then not to mention this, but it's like we're giving Israel all this stuff. Even Vic, like let's say that you're the most unaware person. Have you ever heard of what we're getting in this trade-off with Israel? Like, what are we getting? Have you heard of anything?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything, even though I'm not really that informed when it comes to this subject. I've never heard of anything that they do for us. Yeah, I've never heard of anything that Israel really does for us that it's like, oh, we have to give them all these preferential treatments and stuff like that. I don't know. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, it's lopsided. They get everything. Meanwhile, like I said, free healthcare, everything else, they're supported by us. They're dependents that we can't write off at the end of the year for taxes. Literally, like the not to reference the redheaded stepchild, pun it not intended here, with Ben, but he's not redheaded, by the way. But going back to this, it's like they're dependent that we can't write off. And like we talk about this, we're literally cucking out. We're cucks in this, like we're sitting in the hotel room chair while we're watching everybody else get the benefit as we suffer, and we're not participating in anything. The participation we do have is to our detriment. They'll send soldiers to Kuwait, to everywhere else, like Iraq. Like we'll send, when I say them, they're sending soldiers. We are sending soldiers. They're not sending any military personnel to die for us. Netanyahu said things like, one Israeli life is worth 1,000 US lives. What does that tell you? How they value our lives? They don't care about us. Like we'll pass away, we'll die, but hey, please give us all your money. Right. So I don't know. That's my position on this. But when you see the debate, you're going to be like, damn, this guy is getting destroyed. It's like, so that prompted me. I was like, damn, if I'm doing this, and it's one of the very few debates. I think it's my best debate, believe it or not. But it's one of the very few debates that I can watch myself and be like, damn, I'm even entertained by this. So I think I'm going to be pursuing more politics and debates in the future instead of race things and like, these other little social things, because I think it's really important and nobody's engaging from a Christian perspective, let alone an Orthodox perspective, into politics. Well, Andrew's doing that, but who else besides Andrew? There's very few of us. So I'm going to start dipping my toes in the political waters and doing more debates, doing that too.
Hell yeah, Marte, sounds good. I can't wait to watch them, and like I said, I can't wait to review last night's debate. I think it should be a banger.
Bro, it is. Like I almost want to review it, my own debate. There's no other debate like people hear this all the time. They'll say, well, I hate hearing my own voice. You hear people say that, or I don't want to see myself on camera. Like there's this little revulsion that we have. This is the only debate that when I heard this, I was like, I couldn't stop it. Like I was like, oh, he got destroyed on that point. Oh, another. Damn, he walked into that one too. Like it was like one of those debates. And Tyler had told me, he said, this is my number one topic that I will study for. This is like my bread and butter. And I handed this guy his ass. In my own opinion, maybe somebody out there thinks I'm wrong. And I'm like, this was your bread and butter? You know what? Because of this, I'm going to start leaning towards political debates now from now on. And but the Harry Sisson thing, bro, this is like a bombshell. I can't wait to see this debate. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Versus Harry Sisson. Wow. I haven't really seen much of Harry lately, like doing debates. So I don't know if this is like his first one back or what, but I don't know. I always like seeing those soy boys get destroyed. So it should be really good. And like I said, I've seen some of Benjamin's debates before. He's a good debater. So I think this is going to be good.
I'm not going to like abandon the black debates that I do because I think that there needs to be voices like coons like me, the trash pandas of the world like me. And I lean into this because if they're going to call me this, I'm just going to lean into the trash panda mantra anyways. It takes all the power out of it anyways, this whole, disparaging comment, Uncle Tom's and stuff like that. Yeah, whatever. We just witnessed a guy that Andrew debated on X called Uncle Tom. He really leans into this. It's like, that was also another debate you can review too. Uncle Tom versus Andrew debate that happened on X today. So it's like, there's a black populace of us that wants to be more educated, more well-spoken, and we get bastardized and demonized for having the sense to have more education or try to appear more intelligent and learn more. Yeah, it's crazy.
Exactly.
But there needs to be a populace of us still fighting this rhetoric because we're fighting such an ideological war of cultural overlap, like the blacks that are tearing down our culture. And then this J occupation that's like, I have to say J because I can't say it. It's crazy. Ben was going off the handle with saying it. He was saying Jew. Like he was saying the actual word. He said the other N word of the salute word. And I'm like, bro, like you're like now I have to vet this. Vic, I'm going to send this video to you at the end of the night, or if you can get this and then kind of like have your app or whatever it is, clean the language just so that we can monetize. That'll be good.
Yeah, I could do that. I was already going to do that already because I was going to re-upload this to my channel.
I appreciate that, bro. I'll get a copy as well too. But this is crazy. Vic, any final words? How was the podcast for you, man?
I had fun, man. Like as you said, these are very important things to talk about. So I'm glad that we all were able to have this conversation. And yeah, man, that's what I like about the Woke Autopsy is that we're having these conversations because they need to be had.
I was thinking that Woke Autopsy is dead on arrival. And the only reason why I actually did this is because it was an interesting topic. And I did this more for me. And it's going to sound really selfish, then like the fact that I may not get enough viewers for this. Cause when we do like the junk food podcast, there's way more viewers that watch that, more people that stick around and stay tuned. But when I'd done Woke Autopsy, it was like, bro, like 2 people, like this would be disrespectful if I had Mickey Rourke come on and there was like, bro, you should like this. But you understand that was my viewpoint, my perception. I don't want to bring somebody that's like Jean-Claude Van Damme or somebody else on the podcast and be like, bro, you showed up to that one? This is 2 people watching. That was like, that's what I don't want, bro. And then like no super chats. But this one, people are super chatting. I'm like, damn, maybe we'll keep it alive and Woke Autopsy's not on live support. Who knows? But if anybody else views this on Vic, your end, I want to hear feedback from your audience and my audience, whether or not people want to keep it or leave it. Let's be real.
I will say too, like I got more people watching for this one too than the last few. I think sometimes it takes time. Like the Rollo Tomasi one did pretty good on my channel.
It didn't do too well on my channel. That's why. That was another reason why I was like, damn. And then the Yelena Popovich one, the producer of 50 Cent's movie, Not to, and I'm like, so I'm going off of my channel too, and I'm just like, bro, what the hell's going on here? Do people just not want to see these issues? And then when I asked, the things were like, well, Marte, you're making this all about you. Well, maybe to some degree because we have to host this, but I do talk a lot. I do have a big mouth and just spurg a lot. I do that from time to time, but whatever.
It's a work in progress, man. But I think it's improving. Another thing I want to start doing is sharing shorts from the podcast and stuff around, get more people exposed to it. I think that'll help out a lot too. So speaking of which, are we gonna do another junk food hour? Because that's fun.
That's gonna be next week, and somebody has to purchase Jake's headphones. We're gonna have Vic's hot mic. So that's also going to be served up, and we're going to have extra fries, which is like, remember we had like Chuck Norris. So we got,
yeah.
Well, so the next French fry that we have, if you want to order extra fries, is Elliot Page, and it's going to be freaking hilarious. Like, you want to order the extra fries, and that's only $5. I don't charge a lot for extra fries, but in order to order Vic's hot mic or Jake's headphones that are really upset and emotionally damaged, that's like a $20 super chat. If you want that, those are still up for grabs. You can pay for the frustration of their devices when they deal with people who have severe TDS and everything else. That's called Vic's hot mic once again, and Jake's emotionally damaged headphones for seeing the liberal propaganda that we see on this podcast, which means that they have to suffer through it and watch this and emotionally damage their microphones and headphones if you guys want to pay to see that.
That's hilarious. Hey, yeah, dude. Yeah,
it's true.
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. Can't wait for that one. Can't wait for the next episode of Woke Autopsy, brother. So let's do this.
Yeah, the next guest, the next topic I'll tell you about, it's going to be probably even way more controversial than this one. So hold on to your seats. And the guest that I'm looking at, I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be another surprise guest. Well, not to you, but to the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably going to want to see that. If you guys want to see this, comment underneath this. If you guys want to see another Woke Autopsy, that's going to let me know whether or not this holds any value to you or not.
Yeah. Leave your comments down below. Give us your opinions on Woke Autopsy. Any improvements that you would like to see.
Yeah.
And so that way we can make the show the best that it could be.
This is for you guys. This isn't for us. Like, I want to bring content that's different from anything else, from the Panelverse or anybody else. I want to bring outside forces to hear their opinions, people that you don't normally hear, because what happens is we bring on like the Dusties and everybody else, or the detractors and stuff, and we recycle the same freaking people. What I want to do with Woke Autopsy, and this is my premise, Vic, tell me if you agree with this or not. I want to bring in fresh new blood, people that you don't normally hear from, which is like, damn, he's never in these spaces, but I want to bring people in these spaces that we don't normally hear from, and these controversial opinions and things that we really do care about, or even walk a tightrope with things that, are you sure you can talk about this? That's what Woke Autopsy is at the heart and function of our foundation. And that's why I brought Vic in, because Vic has a really good voice. He's almost a savant when it comes to criticisms and commentary. That's what he does on his channel. But that's what I want to do with Woke Autopsy, is merge the two worlds together and bring in fresh new blood and voices.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I agree with that, man. It sounds good to me. Like I said, I enjoy doing the Woke Autopsy. If you haven't watched the Woke Autopsy, any of the past episodes, you could go to Marte's channel, or you could go to my channel. I actually have it in a playlist on its own, so you could see through our past guests. There are a lot of interesting guests with a lot of interesting stories to tell, all having to do with basically fighting the culture and promoting the culture that we want to see back in our country. So there you go.
Well, on my channel, it's members only, to be honest with you. So it's like, well, maybe you guys didn't want to see that, so I put it in members only. You got to be a member to see it on mine. But if you want to see it, maybe not members only, go to Vic's channel. You can go ahead and check it out for free. Me, it's non-EBT. Everything else on my channel is EBT. So fill up the EBT card and super chat if you want. By the way, we're going to have another junk food podcast. I'll try to upload when that's going to happen. And I'll talk to you, Vic, about when we're going to set it up on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And Jake Varr will be a recurring guest, as well as Vic, too. Trust me, the next episode is the stuff I got lined up for the next episode is going to blow your mind. You're either going to throw your mic across the room or the headphones. So either way, it's going to happen. Vic's hot mic is going to happen, or Jake's headphones, whether or not you buy it or not. But that's also going to be an exclusive. Also, extra fries with Elliot Page is going to be on the next episode, too. So we had Chuck Norris. Now we got Elliot Page on the next episode. That's going to be very crazy.
I think I know where that Elliot Page one is going, but I'm looking forward to that one. I think I have an idea what that is, but yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be hilarious. The Chuck Norris one was hilarious. I've seen a little bit of the Elliot Page stuff, so I think that's gonna be good as well.
Yeah, the extra fries, if you order that for only $5, you can order extra fries on the menu. There's also, like I said, Vic's hot mic and Jake's emotionally damaged headphones. He's not hearing this right now, but he guarantee he's going to throw his headphones across the room and walk off the podcast again. Or you're going to push your mic to the side and just be like, oh boy. So yeah. But anyways, you guys can find me on OTE with Marte Reyes. I do debates. I do podcasts like you've seen here, the Junk Food Hour podcast. Let us know if you want to hear more Woke Autopsy with more celebrity guests. I'll call Ben a celebrity guest. The guy's a celebrity in the Orthodox community. Anyways, that's it for me. Vic?
Yeah, you can find me on my YouTube channel. That's the primary way you can find me, KEWLV1C. I review debates. I sometimes cover drama stuff. I talk about politics, all that good stuff. So yeah, and you can find me on X under the same name as well. So any social media, if you just search up that, you'll probably find me. Yeah,
you'll find me there too. I'm going to lean more towards political debates and content. And I have also the real quick on the World War debate thing. The guy, my first opponent, did write me back. Vic, I really feel bad for the guy, to be honest with you. If you saw the chat I sent you, I feel bad for my opponent. I'm going to be, I think, besides the NDAs, since they've released it now, I mean, might as well, I mean, I think I could talk about it. The first topic that I'm debating in World War debate is anti-feminism in the United States. And my first opponent that's debating me, I could say this, it doesn't hurt or help my opponent or me at all to say this. He doesn't do debates. He does essays online. So think about it. I do debates, and I'm very rapid fire, spitfire, aggressive debater at times. This guy doesn't do debates. He does video essays, and he's fighting me on feminism. So good luck to you. May Christ have mercy on your soul. That's all I'll say about
that will be like a guy who mostly just does shadow boxing, going in his first boxing actual fight against Mike Tyson. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, they're going to be scraping the guy off the walls after this debate. That's what I'm just going to bloodbath. I'm just going to automatically say it's probably going to happen. But you know what, Kung Fu Joe, I look forward to seeing this. Two cool names. We have Cool Vic and Kung Fu Joe. The guy's right to say that they're these names stand out. I'll just say that. Very polarizing names. Your name and Kung Fu Joe. I look forward to seeing that debate as well, too, when that happens. But I'm pretty sure World War Debate's going to update you guys before they update us on what's going on. And if they update us, you guys will find out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I must say just one real quick thing. Yeah, our names are cool and all, but it's not as cool as Marte Rojas, though. I gotta say that.
So horrible. Or Rowles.
Rowles.
Now I want to destroy Not So Erudite for saying that. I have to get vengeance and preserve my bloodline and defend my bloodline by destroying Not So Erudite. Kayla. We'll just call her Kayla. So since you want to steal my name, Kayla, the winner can preserve their family bloodline name, whoever wins this debate. But you know what? That might happen. Like a video game, you have all these characters and then you have the boss level. Maybe that's what they got in store for us in World War Debate, where it's like, you beat everybody else. We got a Not So Erudite with the Agrippa's trilemma.
Agrippa's trilemma, right? Seriously, a special hidden boss. Yeah, dude, that'll be awesome. That'll be good. But yeah, man, good stuff tonight, brother. Had a fun time as always.
Vic, no shade towards you and World War Debate, but I plan on winning the whole thing. Just to let you know, we're friends right now until we're. By the way, folks, I'm just gonna let you know there could be a chance that me and Vic, as friendly as we can be, like notice the background here. It's gonna look like this. If Vic beats Kung Fu Joe and I win and we all win in this Kumite event, verbal Kumite, that we might be facing each other. We could be foes. That's a very good possibility, believe it or not.
Yeah, it really is. I already told Marte that if that happens, I would be very excited about it. That would be a real big challenge for me. And I think it would be awesome. I won't hold back. I know he won't hold back. So if that happens, all I got to say is may the best man win.
I can't underestimate you, because if you're surviving this long in Newsom's California, your immune system and defense system, whatever that's accumulated to in debate, like, oh God, I can't underestimate you for sure. If you've lasted this long in California, damn, yeah, there's some toughness to you, bro.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't underestimate me.
Can't do it, man. All right, that's about it. I'm going to wrap up because I have fried chicken waiting for me and a watermelon drink. Not to be stereotypical, it's delicious. My melanin compels me to do so. But we're out. Talk to you next time. We'll let you guys know when the next episode of Woke Autopsy happens. If it happens, comment below whether or not you want to see it dead on arrival or return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Let us know, guys. Have a good one, everybody.
All right, take care, guys. Christ is God.
Christ is God.